Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Згинуть наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 745 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the police be getting a little bit antsy in Moscow, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and also the news of the ongoing tumult inside of the Russian Federation, as Russian police had to be called from massive cities all around Moscow to swarm into the major capital because of threats and fears of terrorist attacks occurring, and the central government taking a very, very strong approach to what was going to be a potential for terrorist attacks, and now they are pretty much violating everyone's rights inside the city of Moscow, to put that in a light way. We'll be getting into that here later on in just a moment, but I do have to say that tonight is electric at the moment. People have been flooding into this stream like no other night before. There are already 3,000 of y'all here, and we just went live literally 1 minute ago. The countdown was what was running before that. So, really quickly, if you are here and hyped up to hear the news tonight, put 3 LSAs in the chat. Just for the hell of it. Put 3 LSAs in the chat and let us know that you're happy to be a part of the Lee Spring Army. But moving on from that and into our major news tonight, it is time for us to move on up into the city of Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation and the largest city in Russia. Moscow is a city that has existed for not too long, actually. It's only existed since about the 1300s at the earliest, even just a little bit before that, maybe the late 1200s, but never really that major of a city until the time of the Soviet Union and the latter part of the Russian Empire. Of course, in the modern day, the city of Moscow makes up nearly 10% of the Russian Federation's actual population, living within one major city. The city of Moscow is also the most important one for the Russians because it is the modern-day capital of Russia as well, meaning that the seat of power that Putin runs and manages the entire country from is here within this capital. Just 48 hours ago, the United States and British embassies put out a statement saying that there was going to be some kind of a imminent severe terroristic threat or attack on the city of Moscow, and pleaded with American and British citizens to shelter in place and to hide over those 48 hours until it had passed. At this moment, that 48-hour window has reached a critical point, and at the moment, this little 48-hour window is about to end, actually, at this moment right now. But it appears that the Russians have apparently been tipped off that that window may have only been a rough approximate, and there may be a very big room or a very large leeway for a actual terroristic threat to happen or occur here within the next few hours, or maybe even the next day or two. And we've seen that, according to information that we've gotten, the Russian police inside of Moscow have been quote-unquote put on a reinforced regime. Kind of like the diet that you put your dog on when it starts to get a little bit too heavy, you put it on that reinforced diet. This is kind of the same thing for the Moscow police. What they've done
I wonder what they consider a reinforced regime. Like they've given Barney Fife a few bullets now, or what? Because, they really can't hold off any threats before, like Wagner and stuff like that. Just police officers in Russia in general are just poorly equipped. Not that they're supposed to be like military or anything, but they are supposed to be like a decent police force, and they can't really do that right.
And I would agree, while I try and figure out why in the world my fan was dead. I was sitting here like, it is hot in this room. But moving on from that, that is a good point, that the Russian police aren't necessarily a force to be reckoned with, especially when dealing with anything that looks a lot like the Russian armed forces, like the Wagner group. The Russian police, even the armed police, proved to be pretty much ineffective against the Wagner, as they would usually lay down their arms and allow them to pass without really doing anything to them. However, one thing that the Russian police do well is go up against unarmed civilians or anything along those lines, and they do that with peak efficiency. There's no one who does oppression of the public better than the Russian police or the Chinese Communist Party. One or the other, but today we're talking about the Russian police. From what we understand, loads of police officers and police units have pretty much been stripped from their actual cities. For example, the city of Leningrad has pretty much had their entire police force move from their city into Moscow to try and deal with the counterterrorism issue, pretty much stripping the outskirts of Moscow and its major cities of almost all of their police forces, but centralizing them all into the actual Moscow metropolitan area to try and deal with the threats that the Russians think are coming their way. Whether that's going to work or not is one thing or another, but we have seen that the Russians have put a high alert out in Moscow, at least from what we know. We haven't heard about any high alerts being put out in any other major cities like St. Petersburg, Yekaterinburg, Novosibirsk, or any other cities like that, but we have heard of the Russian police being put on high alert in Moscow, and they are already doing some very questionable things. I can't show y'all this clip. Y'all will have to click on the link in the description below to really look at this, because what this clip shows is from Zvezda News, and it happened today. The Russians believed that two Kazakhstani or Kazakh immigrants were planning on conducting a terrorist attack on a synagogue in Moscow. At least that's their official claim. The FSB went to the house, busted in, and shot the two people on site and killed them. And this video actually shows a little bit of that, not the actual shooting, but the aftermath of it. And you can also see a oddly placed Makarov on the floor that had already... Let me see if I can actually show that to y'all. I'm going to have to take this off screen for a quick moment and see if I can show it to y'all, because I watched the entire clip to try and see what was going on. And, you know, I actually... let's see. Wait a minute. Hang on. That's interesting. They had 7 and 6. They had a map of Moscow, like a paper map, and a couple of different kinds of bleach. Okay, so I think I can show this to y'all because this isn't anything that's too graphic. But this is something I found a little interesting to me. So let me move this over here. And what you're seeing here on screen is a Makarov pistol that was going to be used by one of the guys that, was supposedly going to be used by one of the guys that got gunned down. But what's interesting about this is that you can see that the slide is locked back in the open position, meaning that if there was an actual FSB raid that happened and we didn't hear about any shots being returned at the FSB, we only heard that the FSB ran in, even according to the official Russian report, and pretty much gunned these guys down. It's kind of a little bizarre to see that apparently they were going up against armed assailants that had already unloaded the clips inside of their pistols, or were using unloaded pistols in the first place. A little bit odd, or what the Russians are trying, really, just not even going through the analysis. We all know what this is. This is more so of a staged thing. They probably ran into this building. These guys probably didn't have any weapons whatsoever, and they ended up wiping them out and then planting weapons onto them, because it's really weird that the pistol is here in the middle of the rug, not in the guy's hand, especially if he was supposed to be holding it or shooting it. And on top of that, it's already been cleared. The clip is still in the pistol, as a matter of fact. So we know that what they're attempting to show right here is that the pistol was actually being used, because you can see the bottom of the clip right there jutting out from the bottom of the Makarov. And I know because I have a Makarov, and the clips have this little lip at the front of them where you can actually pull them out. And there's a whole lot to do with the Makarov there, and I'll try and explain that here in a second to get into some forensics and explain to y'all why this is staged and fake, and these guys probably didn't even have weapons at all. And also, the slide, once again, is locked back in the open position on the pistol, once again proving and showing that this is something that this guy wouldn't have used if he was actually being attacked, and he was planning on using this weapon against the FSB. Have a feeling that this was staged. But another thing that I have to talk about with the Makarov in particular is that the pistol is not like modern Western pistols. And I'll take one of Matthew's favorite pistols, the Glock 19, to try and explain a little bit about the differences. So, if I am correct, and let me make sure I get the correct side of the pistol. If I'm correct, Matthew, because I don't know a lot about Glocks, this right here, this little button, would be the clip release, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's the mag release, but it's actually on the other side. This is just the back end of the mag release. This part actually doesn't do anything. There's the actual release.
Right here?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, just double checking. Had to make sure. So now let me go get a Makarov, and let me show y'all a Makarov, because I know a lot about how the Makarov works. But beyond that, here is a Makarov, and that right there is the slide release. You can also see the clip right down here, or magazine clip, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. It holds the ammunition for the weapon. But you can see the clip right down here, and unlike Western weapons that have a magazine or a clip release on the side of the pistol where you push it and the magazine automatically ejects so that way you can clear it, you can easily tell that a Makarov has never been cleared and the clip is removed from the firearm, because on the Makarov there's a small little semicircle looking thing right back here at the back of the pistol grip, and you actually have to push that backwards and then use your thumb on this protruding area here to push down on the clip to actually pull it out. Because of that, we know one thing for certain in the clip that I just showed y'all. The Russians did not clear the pistol. At least that's what they're trying to show, is that they did not clear the pistol. But the slide was still back and locked in the open position, or more so locked in the fired position, showing that the whole entire clip would have been emptied. So going off of that, this entire thing that the Russians showed in that clip, I can't show the whole thing here on stream, was most likely a fabrication to try and justify the actions of the Russian FSB today. Probably because they're very trigger happy, because there's a lot of fear inside of Moscow at the moment, in the police and the FSB, which are all a part of the Russian police apparatus, to try and deal with the supposed terroristic threat that may be coming. We can already see that chaos is pretty much unfolding, and they're trying to disguise the chaos as proactive, assertive order being put out by the Russian government. But moving on from that, and I hope that explains really well why I believe that video and that clip is a fabrication, it still is giving us enough proof and evidence to work with that we know without a shadow of a doubt that the Russian police and the Russian government is extremely concerned in acting with excessive force inside of Moscow to try and deal with this perceived threat that will be coming around to the Russian central government at any given moment at this point. We don't know what it is. The US and UK embassies appear to have some kind of knowledge of a coming terroristic attack, but they didn't really add a lot to the information, probably to not give the Russians any kind of help dealing with it. We assume that it's not related to the West, and we also assume that it's probably not related to Ukraine either, so it may be something that's being perpetrated by Russian groups inside of the country, for example, the Ingushetia Liberation Army, or it could be something that is being perpetrated by other countries that are somewhat close to Russia, but still not necessarily friendly. For example, Kazakhstan, which would make that group of people inside of Moscow that was gunned down a highly likely target. It could be anyone from a Stand Series country, it could be anyone from anywhere inside of Russia, but we have a feeling that it's probably not heavily related, well, it's not related at all to any Western country or any of their wishes, and probably not related to Ukraine's wishes at all either. Ukraine has largely veered away from conducting what would be called terrorist attacks and have been more so conducting precise partisan attacks through the Freedom of Russia Legion, which operates as a partisan group inside of Russia, and also their own spies and partisans that they have inserted into Russia to try and cause damage to military infrastructure and also transportation infrastructure. But speaking of the fears inside of Moscow, it appears that their fears are not just internalized inside of the Russian Federation. They do expand outwards into the rest of the Western world, as France is starting to ramp up their rhetoric today to an unbelievable height. Today, the French Foreign Minister, Sojourn, came out and made a statement that nothing is being excluded. While the Ukrainians are not requesting for French armed intervention in Ukraine, they're willing to give it, and at any given moment at this point, according to what he said. This is the direct quote from the French Foreign Minister Sojourn. Ukraine did not ask us to send troops. Ukraine is asking us to send ammunition now. But he then added that we do not exclude anything for the coming months, including the deployment of French troops into Ukraine, not in supporting roles, but in frontline armed intervention roles, pretty much joining the war on the side of Ukraine. We know that the statement includes that because just yesterday, President Emmanuel Macron was clearly stating that armed intervention was a high likelihood. According to the leader of the Communist Party of France, which spoke to Macron about the specific details of what would happen in that instance, he also added to the information that the Ukrainians could count on French armed intervention in the war if the Russians attempted an offensive on the city of Kyiv or attempted to capture the city of Odessa. Either one of those things would be an immediate catalyst to a French joining in the war. And at the moment, it appears that our foreign minister from France, Sojourn, is working very hard on trying to gain France some allies within NATO and the European Union that will be able to march into France side by side with them if the need ever arose. And we got to see today that France was, Sojourn was visiting some of the Baltic states. Here he was actually visiting the country of Lithuania and apparently trying to find other nations that were going to join France on going into Ukraine if there was ever a need for an armed intervention. At the moment, from what we know, they are still considering sending troops in, the special forces, to quote-unquote repair the trucks, but this is more so revolving around another step in the escalation, a few more steps further down the line, where French troops and other allied groups that support the French movement may move into Ukraine and begin to actually engage the Russian army there. This is a huge move, and once again, we're starting to see that the French aren't just going around the diplomatic talk, they're actually putting some elbow grease and effort into trying to find people that would support their idea and their cause, and not only that, they are continuing the rhetoric, not just on the office of the President of France, but throughout the Department of, pretty much the French Department of State, throughout the French General Assembly. We're starting to see this as a common statement in the French government. And a lot of people...
I was about to say, the fact that they're talking about this for so long, they've been making statements like this for about a month now, and they haven't let it go. And some people were saying that maybe it was just political statements that they were doing here to try to make a point. But for them to be holding on to it for over a month now, to me, that indicates they're serious, and they might actually have a plan in motion to, actually go into Ukraine if Odessa or Kyiv is assaulted once again by the Russians.
And I would say so. I mean, it's a very crazy thing to think that the French rhetoric went from actually trying to find common ground in between the Ukrainians and Russians at the beginning of the war and try and broker a peace deal, to now they're moving on into actually getting involved in the war directly and putting French soldiers inside of Ukraine. A very interesting development, and certainly considering that they're trying to get other countries to join them, this may become almost a NATO-wide affair going on into the future, especially inside of Europe. But moving on from that, there is apparently probably a background reason as to why France is starting to get so vehement and so passionate about support for Ukraine, even to the point of suggesting that they would send their own sons and daughters to possibly die on the battlefields of Ukraine in defense of Ukraine and the strategic interests of NATO and the rest of Europe. And this kind of ties into a little bit of news that we got today from inside of the United States of America. Today, the F-35 Lightning II, the most advanced and capable stealth multi-role fighter here in the United States, has just been approved to be able to carry a nuclear payload. The F-35 Lightning is probably one of the most common and ubiquitous stealth multi-role fighters around the entire world at this point, being the most manufactured, being the most advanced, being the most capable, even better than the F-22 in most regards, interestingly enough. This aircraft is pretty much the definition of what a real 5th generation aircraft, a multi-role, would look like. It's actually done incredibly well as far as the foreign markets go. This thing has been exported to nearly everyone who wanted one and who could buy one. And really quickly, to get you all the list of operators, let me scroll all the way down on Wikipedia, because the list is actually quite extensive for a stealth aircraft. The F-22, just to put that out there, was never actually allowed to be exported or sold to foreign countries. It was only used by the United States of America alone. And I'm trying to see if we can get the... Here we go. Here's the list. They don't have a map. But here are all of the operators of the F-35 Lightning II so far. Australia, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Greece, Israel, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, South Korea, Singapore, Switzerland, currently has an order of 35 of them, 36 of them actually, the UK, the United States, and then there's a couple of potential operators, such as the Czech Republic and Romania, and then also Turkey got axed pretty recently because they bought some S-400s from the Russians. There were some security concerns, so we threw them out. But beyond that...
Wait a minute, China was looking to buy a few. It looks like they requested to buy, let's see, a handful
Taiwan.
of them. Oh, really?
Yeah, the Republic of China is Taiwan.
Oh, well.
yeah. I was like, when you said China, I was like, oh, that's the other China. That's the good China.
That's why I was so shocked. I was thinking China was trying to buy some F-35s. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's something that confuses a lot of people, rightfully so, is the naming conventions in between Taiwan and China, because their official names is the Republic of China for Taiwan and the People's Republic of China for Communist China on the mainland. So even on the official naming register, it is extremely confusing to understand who's who, because they sound very similar. The People's Republic of China and the Republic of China is only one word apart from being the exact same name for two different countries.
Can we just call that bad boy Taiwan already and make it simple? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I know. But nevertheless, it has a very big reason for being called the Republic of China. But that's rooted deep in the history of the past pretty much 90 years of why it's called that. because they actually did control all of mainland China at one point, but then they got defeated by the communist Chinese, and now Taiwan is all that's left of the China that existed before the communists took over. That's why it's called the Republic of China. But beyond that,
But we apparently didn't let them buy any, or from the looks of it, or something like that. Somebody canceled it or didn't let them have it.
Well, it has a little bit to do with procurement, diplomacy, and things like that, so sadly we can't get into it, but they were denied. They were axed from ever getting an F-35, at least for the moment, along with Thailand and the UAE. But nevertheless, beyond that, this is the most common fighter jet in the entire, well, the stealth fighter jet in the entirety of the world. More so than any stealth aircraft the Russians produce, because they've only produced, I think, like 16 of them. More than the Chinese have ever produced. They've produced, I think, 300 of them. I believe at this moment, there's nearly 1,000 F-35 Lightning IIs in the skies around the world at the moment. Also inside the U.S. Air Force. And just today, like I was getting to, the F-35 has been declared nuclear capable. It was able to, it was able to carry and drop, which you can see a picture of right here, a B-61-12 nuclear bomb dummy. Meaning that this thing can now carry a nuclear payload. It could do that from the beginning, but today was really the day that nuclear certification was done, so that way it can truly be called a nuclear-capable aircraft, and now it is. This is something that is huge, because while we all have known forever that the F-35 could easily carry a tactical nuclear weapon, or a nuclear weapon at all for that matter, the fact that it's officially been declared, or more so officially been cleared to carry a nuclear weapon, is a very big thing, because now it's not just a matter of fiction, it's a matter of reality that an F-35, which is pretty much completely invisible to most modern forms of radar, can fly itself pretty much into Russia, if it wanted to, and drop a nuclear bomb on anything. And the Russians would have literally no response time at all until that bomb actually detonated on its target. That is something that is giving the United States, once again, a huge cutting edge against our rivals around the world, the People's Republic of China, or aka China, or the Russian Federation, aka Russia, and once again putting us on a level playing field with an equal deterrent, making sure that the Russians and the Chinese don't do anything because they have a slight upper hand. Now, we also have a similar upper hand as well, and we've been able to level the playing field by getting the F-35 nuclear capable. However, this kind of ties into something as to why the French are getting so vehement against the Russians inside of Ukraine, and possibly even talking about an armed intervention. The reason why they're talking about that is that there is actually a very big concern by the U.S. Department of Defense and U.S. intelligence back in late 2022 that the Russians were actually going to use tactical nuclear weapons or precision nuclear strikes in Ukraine by the end of that year. Of course, it's a long time ago now. It's almost a year and a half ago when that was being considered a major concern by the U.S. Department of Defense and the intelligence agencies. But nowadays, that is something that is once again kind of on the table, is whether the Russians are once again starting to consider, due to the complete lack of progress in Ukraine and the massive amounts of attrition that the Russian armed forces are taking in this prolonged war, whether they would actually try and use a tactical nuclear strike in Ukraine, and what in the world would that entail for everyone around the world. And a lot of people have had many different comments on this. A lot of people believe that it's still nothing more than a bluff, because they haven't done it for 2 years, over 2 years at this point, and they probably never will do it, even if the war went on for another whole 2 years. Some people are saying that they do have it ready, but it's a last resort. Some people are saying all kinds of different things about this. Kind of like another controversial topic that we're actually about to get into in just a second, but I want to make sure that we talk about this one, because this is something that could seriously affect a large amount of people, not just in Ukraine, but around the Western world, because we know that the United States does have a security guarantee for Ukraine. This was laid out in the first 3 months of the war. If a chemical, biological, or nuclear weapon is to be used in Ukraine, according to the statement that was made way back at the beginning of the war by the U.S. Office of the President, armed intervention on the United States part will occur inside of Ukraine against the Russian Federation, meaning the U.S. will enter the war on the side of Ukraine. That, from what we understand, is still a standing statement that we could take to the bank and cash the check on. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about this. And Matthew, what are people really thinking? What do you think about it?
All right, so we asked folks, what are your thoughts about U.S. intel revealing that the West prepared for a Russian nuclear strike on Ukraine back in 2022? And also, by the way, we haven't seen anything thus far indicating that that plan has been put out of action just yet. But it looks like the majority of folks say that Russia still has the option ready to go, while only 31% said it's a last resort for Russia, and only 19% said Russia would never nuke Ukraine. And I would have to say that I don't think we can go as far as to say Russia would never do it, but I think it would be a very last resort for them, because even though Russia is an evil regime and Putin is an evil fella, he doesn't want to basically start a global annihilation by launching nukes into Ukraine, because that could trigger a very bad sequence of events for Russia. So I don't think he's ready to do that. But the fact that the West was preparing for that nuclear strike indicates that Russia was seriously actually thinking about doing it back in 2022. So if we're just learning about that now, I'm wondering how many more times has he actually seriously considered doing that, and we're simply not being made aware of it yet in the public. I'm kind of curious about that myself, but I guess we'll never know until after the war's over. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the Russians probably would have that as a last resort, if at all. I would honestly doubt that they would ever nuke Ukraine, in my honest opinion, because there has been so many moments where the Russians would have nuked Ukraine if they wanted to. Back when they lost the Northern Front, back when they lost the Balaklia Front, back when they lost the Kherson Front, there are multiple times where they could have started to conduct tactical nuclear strikes on Ukrainian forces on the battlefield, but they never did. In going off of that, I would have to say that they're probably never going to launch a nuclear strike, because once again, Russia's nuclear doctrine is purely a defensive doctrine, meant to protect the Russian Federation if the existence of the state is threatened by an exterior force. That isn't happening in Ukraine. The Russians, on an actual governmental level, know that the war is an offensive war on their part. They did declare the war, they did invade Ukraine, and the war is entirely being encompassed within the territory of Ukraine, meaning that this would not fall under a Russian defensive nuclear doctrine. So I'm heavily doubting that they'd ever really use a tactical nuclear weapon. I have a feeling that the concern is quite high, but one has to think about the optics of doing something like that. The Russians saying that they're winning the war, but they're honestly losing it so badly, they have to end up using nuclear weapons against a small country. Not only that is that a massive hit to Russia's prestige on a abstract level, but it also would draw in major nations like the United States of America directly into the conflict, from what we understand, and most likely devolve this into a world war, and then later on a nuclear Armageddon in between Russia, the United States, France, and the United Kingdom. Because of that, I have a feeling that they probably will never actually nuke Ukraine. But what they probably wish at this point that they would have, because we found out that they lost another $500 million aircraft just yesterday, possibly. I have to put out possibly because it looks like everything is coming together to say that this was something that happened, but we don't have a complete confirmation yet of picture and video footage from the ground. So at the moment, we have to say this is possible, but it's not absolute. So moving us into the city of Taganrog for a quick moment, this is the Taganrog Airbase. And you can see here a lot of nice looking IL-76s, the backbone of the Russian aviation transport brigades, or more so airlift wings. There's a load of them. But one thing that's interesting is that you may notice in the satellite picture here, and this is something I forgot to point out while I was moving around the base, there are no AWACS planes here. No A-50s. It's just all IL-76s. I can't believe it's not butter. But one thing that is butter is that there was an A-50 spotted at the Taganrog airbase just the other day. This was a picture taken on the 29th of February of 2024. And we can see, and I'll try and show you all this little specific area of the airfield. And let me make sure to find it. It looks like it is somewhere, and let me make sure. So there's some kind of a hangar bay here, and there's a tarmac here, Tu-95. It's like an offshoot area, so it looks like it would be somewhere around here, possibly. But nevertheless, what we know is that there was an A-50 at this airfield, and when it says Taganrog South Airfield, so it's not this one, it is actually this one. And well, what do you know? There it is right there. There's another A-50 right there. That one is an operational one. The one by it, the one right by next to it, that one appears to be derelict and it's been left to rot at the airfield. But this one, from what we understand, is operational. And it was spotted again almost in the same location on the 29th of February of 2024. From what we understand, and now I have to move everything further south because I was locating the wrong airfield. That is not the southern airfield up on the northern side of town, which seems to be obvious. This is actually the southern airfield down here, but both of them are both military air bases. One for an airlift wing. This one appears to be operating maybe a strategic bomber fleet of Tu-95s or an A-50 fleet of AWACS. But beyond that, from what we know, the attack possibly targeted the southern airfield and may have knocked out another $500 million A-50 in the process. We don't know that yet, but we did get to hear of the swarm of drones again over the city, and I think it's fairly certain that some kind of severe damage was caused, but we don't know exact details at the moment. So here's another clip of the Taganrog airbase attack, and here we go.
A little complicated lawnmower going in the dark.
Oh!
Just a little backfire, bliat.
And that's the end of the clip right there. Very interesting to see that the Russians apparently may have lost another A-50, but we'll have to wait to see if they lost another $500 million. You have to put into consideration that $500 million is a lot for anyone, and especially the Russian Federation. Their current expected military spending this year in 2024 in a full-scale war, mind you, is around $89 billion. To put that into perspective, the United States is spending about $900 billion per year annually at this point on national defense, meaning that they spend 10% of what the U.S. spends annually on their armed forces, even in the middle of a full-blown war. Losing a $500 million aircraft for them is actually a serious loss. If it was the United States that was losing that aircraft, that isn't as big of a loss as far as spending goes, or percentage of spending annually. For the Russians, however, this is a serious loss if it did happen again, and it appears that the Russians are once again getting their asses handed to them, quite rightfully, in the war so far. But one person seems to not really be of that mindset, and I've seen the chat going wild on this person. I want to make this quite clear, really quickly. And this isn't anything that I'm telling y'all can't talk about or can't talk about in a certain way, but I would like to give a little bit of context and clarification before we even move into it, just to make this quite clear. I see a lot of people, because the certain person I'm talking about is actually the head of the Roman Catholic Church, are trying to attack the religion of Catholicism as a whole. I would say that we shouldn't really be viewing the Pope in this instance as a representative of the Catholic Church or the faith of the Catholics, but more so as a representative of himself and his own opinions. Kind of like how we dissociate Elon Musk from SpaceX and Tesla when we talk about him, I would do a very similar thing for the Pope, although the Pope's connection to the Catholic Church is one that is actually, watertight. I would still say that this is more so a statement on the end of the Pope himself and not a complete representation of the Catholic Church. And I have a feeling that even in the Catholic Church, there has been a massive divide about the statements that have been made today. So we're going to be moving into this, but I just want to make this very clear. I feel like the statement should be more so directed at the Pope, more so than the Catholics as a whole, because I don't think Catholics deserve the heat. I mean, it's not your neighbor that was a Catholic that said this statement today, or your local Catholic church. It was the Pope himself who said it, and he kind of represents himself.
From what I've seen in the chat, it looks like everyone's definitely putting it on the Pope for sure. That's all I've seen in the chat for the last 5 minutes is the statements going toward the Pope.
So now that we got that out of the way, because I saw some comments coming in, I was like, oh, because some people were like, wait a minute, don't do that. And I was like, yeah, let's not do that. I'm not going to stop y'all from doing that necessarily, but at the same time, I'd kind of discourage it because it's a little bit rude to folks who are Catholics who may not be agreeing with the Pope. But moving on from that and into Italy and into the Vatican here in the middle of Rome. And let me actually move this over because this is close to the Pantheon. So here's the Vatican right here. According to what we've heard today, the Pope has suggested, according to what we've heard from Nexta, that he's saying that Ukraine should have the courage of the white flag, quote unquote, in negotiations. And a direct quote from what the Pope said is that when you see that you have failed, that things are not going well, you need to have the courage to negotiate. And he said this as a direct statement towards the president of Ukraine, not towards the Russian Federation. This is something that is really bizarre because we know, for one, that the Pope has actually been to Ukraine and has personally seen, because the Ukrainians showed them to them, the atrocities that happened at Bucha Hospital and Irpin, which are some of the most infamous war crimes that were conducted over the course of the war, even to the present day. But there are many others that have been accounted here on this channel that were not shown to the Pope. The statement comes off as very odd as well, considering that the Ukrainians aren't losing. Things are not going perfectly. I mean, they're not steamrolling the Russians and pushing them out of Ukraine by tomorrow, but they are still holding their ground. They're doing quite well, and they are inflicting high casualties on the Russian forces on a daily basis. Not only that, they are pulling off incredible feats, like shooting down multiple AWACS planes costing hundreds of millions of dollars apiece, single-handedly destroying most of the Russian Navy's abilities inside the Black Sea, and not only that, dealing catastrophic blows to the air power of the Russian Air Force. All of these things considered, the Ukrainians are still doing quite well at this war, and for the Pope to say that they should have the courage, quote-unquote, of the white flag, meaning the flag of surrender, that's the only thing that a white flag represents, that is something a little bit odd to me, and something that has been very controversial today, as we've seen. We actually put that into a video that we made earlier today, and it's probably one of our most commented on videos here in recent channel history. At the moment, there is nearly 1.2, there's actually 1.2 thousand comments on that video, as compared to about the 500 to 300 comments that we get per average every day. A lot of people had a lot of stuff, a lot of opinions that they weighed in on that statement, because some people are saying that maybe Ukraine should negotiate, you know, at least open up to negotiations. They don't have to accept anything, they don't have to give up anything, but at least go to the negotiating table. Other people are saying that the Pope is just dead wrong, and that statement is completely untrue, and he doesn't really understand the strategic implications. And one of the few people, you know, just to say this, one of the few people in the world that would be at that level, that would be considered a semi-governmental level, that would not have a good grasp on strategic concerns, probably would be the Pope. The Pope, as a leader or a figure, does not actually have to concern themselves or himself with strategic concerns. The Pope has nothing to do with any strategic concerns anywhere in NATO, anywhere in Europe, anywhere for the Western sphere. The Pope is just a Pope, and speaks his mind on things. So one of the few people that you could actually say on that level has absolutely no grasp whatsoever on strategic concerns for the West would actually be the Pope, and that would actually be a fair argument to make against the Pope. But many people have had many different kinds of comments to make in the chat, and it's very interesting to see that almost everyone is almost on the same page, looking at it in different ways, but as from what I can see, everyone is saying nearly the same thing. And Matthew, what do you think about this? And most importantly, what is everyone saying about this?
So we asked everyone about the question of the Pope saying Ukraine should have the courage to negotiate an end to the war. And at 67%, the majority said the Pope is 100% wrong. And at 25% said he had good intentions, but it was a bad statement. And in reality, if the Pope was going to make a statement like he did, to say that an army is failing and that they should have the courage to negotiate the end of the war and end it, he should have gone and met with Putin and told him that instead, because that's actually who needed to hear that. Ukraine is fighting for their survival. So for the Pope to come in and sort of put a dampening of a spirit on Ukraine while they're fighting for their survival against an invasion force, which is Russia, that seems misplaced. I think he's 100% wrong. And in reality, he really shouldn't be saying things like that about military strategy, because that's something that's totally up to Ukraine. And if he's saying something like that, he should say it in private. I'm not sure if he said that out loud or not, or maybe somebody leaked that out. But that definitely should not be said publicly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say those kinds of statements, I believe, are wrong. One, the concept of the Pope, you know, not trying to get into any kind of a religious level or anything, should be that the Pope should always be trying to support the good in the world, you know, even if it doesn't really have anything to do exactly with religion. And the war in Ukraine really has nothing to do with religion at all. The war in Ukraine is a fight of good versus evil in a way, and it's an evil that the Pope has actually been able to see because he has visited Ukraine personally before and has been shown the atrocities that the Russians have committed. The fact that he would say that the Ukrainians might need to go to the negotiating table, whether he means in an outright unconditional surrender or in a negotiated peace, he is saying that good should bend its knee to evil in this moment. just for the principle of ending a war. That is a little bit odd to me, and I would say that the statement was either poorly worded or is just entirely wrong, because once again, we don't really get a lot of context behind the actual statement by the Pope, so it may have just been a poorly worded statement, or it may have been fully intentional and meant the way it came out, and then it's just completely wrong. But I would have to agree with pretty much all of y'all. It was a bad statement, and one that I would not agree with much at all, at least in my opinion. But moving on,
has the Pope ever gone and met with Putin during the war thus far? Because I don't recall.
I don't think he has, from what I understand. I think he's only met with Zelensky, but let me check. Has the Pope met Putin? Let's see. Let's see here. Trying to see. Let's see. Pope wants to visit Moscow. But... So it doesn't look like. Let's see. It doesn't look like he's actually met with him, and if he did, from what I can tell, it would have been pretty much in the first 3 or 4 months of the war. At that. At that time. So going off of that, I can't see a time where he actually has met with Putin rather than that one instance. And even then, I can't really find a lot about that moment if it did happen. But nevertheless, really interesting to see that he made a statement like that. And I see a lot of people in the chat, and I have to say this, while we do know politics, we also do know religion as well on this channel, because that is a very divisive and violent topic as well. So I would have to say, please refrain from putting things in a religious vein and trying to attack the Catholic Church or, any group for that matter. But beyond that, I would have to say that his statements seem to be poorly made today or completely wrong, one or the other. And I would have to say that for him to be saying that the war isn't going well for the Ukrainians, there is proof in Russian cemeteries to the contrary. Inside of the city of Tula, we got satellite footage today, or more so satellite photography, showing the Tula cemetery in October of 2021, several months before the war in Ukraine began, and notice that there's a funeral plot that has been filled in over here in the top left, Matthew, but everything else is completely devoid of any tombstones, any headstones, anything like that. When we move on into April of 2023, in the middle of last year, we can see that this cemetery has now filled almost 3 entire brand new plots, and they already appear to be working on getting the older plots ready to go to fill in. From what we know, almost all of these casualties are from the war in Ukraine itself, and not really a lot of them are just from the city of Tula and people naturally passing away. It's showing that Russian losses, even at this point in the war, way back last year, are rapidly increasing, they are very high, and that the actual effect of that can be seen in the Russian cemeteries themselves, even from that long ago. It's almost an entire year since this satellite picture was taken in April of 2023, and almost 3 years since this picture was taken in October of 2021. And you can see the actual effect the war is having on how many Russian civilians, how many Russian citizens more so, have died in the war from how many tombstones there are in just the Tula cemetery alone. And I would have to say that with the cemeteries filling up that quickly, this certainly cannot be a winning war for the Russians. You don't see a lot of Ukrainian cemeteries getting filled up this quickly. This is one that is pretty shocking to see on any level. And what's even crazier, Matthew, is that this was only, I think, 2 or 3 months before the Wagner coup happened last year as well. And I wonder how much more the cemeteries were filled after that happened, because the Wagner coup was right before the Battle of Avdiivka, and I would bet that the rest of these remaining cemetery plots were probably filled in completely by this point in time if we ever get another satellite picture of this Tula cemetery.
Oh yeah, man, this land is definitely filled in by now, like I have no doubt about it.
I have no doubt about it either, but hopefully we'll get some satellite photography here in the near future just to double check and make sure. But moving on from that, it's time for us to move into Ukraine itself and into the major events and news that happen here, starting with our location unknowns in our first clip, showing that a Russian soldier that is going to be tried for war crimes. War crimes are something that it's actually kind of hard to get charged with in a war, because you first have to be actually witness conducting a war crime, and second, you have to be caught and then held accountable for it. And it looks like this guy actually got caught and held accountable for it. According to the caption here, this Russian soldier executed a Ukrainian prisoner of war on January 6th of this year and has now been captured and is being tried for war crimes. Ukraine does not have the death penalty, so there is no chance of this guy being sentenced to death. The worst thing he can be sentenced to is a life imprisonment without the possibility of parole inside of Ukraine. It's also something, I have to say this, the war has shown me, especially when we look at war criminals like this, it's really made me think about the concept of the death penalty. Because I feel like a war criminal like this, who's executed a Ukrainian prisoner of war, in my opinion, should possibly be able to face execution. Because I feel like the crime is so severe, and also the fact of the matter that is so heinous, and this guy is probably a really sick guy, that you would feel like it would be more so, more proper justice to execute the guy than to put him in life in prison. Because life imprisonment, prison isn't necessarily the greatest place, but that's still a lot more cushy than, say, an execution. And I feel like at this point, maybe possibly, Ukraine might want to look into having a special exception to the death penalty, and maybe bringing about the death penalty for any charges of war crimes, or at least the possibility of being sentenced to death for war crimes. Because
I'm kind of surprised they took him in to like actually put him through the process to prosecute him. If they recognized him on the battlefield and knew he was a war criminal, I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't do it, but it seems like maybe they would have sort of like dealt with that on the field.
you would think they would have. But they probably didn't know about it on the field, because the way that the war crimes are found is actually a really interesting process. Usually the soldiers that capture, like this guy in particular on the field, they have no idea this guy's a war criminal. They capture him, and then he goes back for processing. Like I say at the end of every clip, Anthony, where I'm like, they're taking these guys back for processing. Processing is an actual thing. They take him back to a processing unit that processes incoming prisoners of war, and they try and match them with any databases on war criminals or people that they have charged with war crimes to see if their face, from what they've been able to find, or at least their identifying information, matches up with what's in their war crimes database. It's kind of like a arrest warrant put out here in the United States. And if they match either their face or their names to a person that is known to have committed a war crime and they've been charged with that war crime, then while they're being processed, they're then detained specially away from the rest of the prisoners of war, and then moved into a special facility that is pretty much like a specific jail that then will take them to a war crimes court inside of Ukraine and then try them there. So the frontline soldiers don't really have the ability, most times, to conduct frontline justice, because they don't even know that they've captured a prisoner of war. It's only the processing unit and everyone beyond that point that knows what crime this guy committed.
Interesting. So the guys on the battlefield may not have recognized him.
Probably did not recognize him, because they usually, unless if they were there, those soldiers were there to witness the war crime, and usually they probably would have done something about it if they were. They have no idea the guy's a war criminal. It's kind of similar to try and find a good way to explain how Heinrich Himmler almost made it through and escaped out of World War II because he disguised himself. Let me see if I can pull that up. Because if y'all don't know, Heinrich Himmler at the end of World War II was actually the second most powerful person behind Hitler. And at the end of the war, he actually tried to escape, full on, tried to escape. And what he did, let me see if I can actually get down here. Let's see here. Let's see, 20th of July. We don't want to know about that. We want to know about his capture. So let's see here. Okay, so I had to make sure that I got this right. I did get this right. He did make it through, and then he ended up dying by his own hand, but I had to make sure to get this correct. So what happened is that Himmler shaved off his mustache. I believe he shaved off most of his facial hair, pretty much. He dressed up in a normal military uniform, a Wehrmacht uniform, and that made him unrecognizable enough that Allied soldiers in the Western Front didn't recognize that he slipped through. He then wandered his way to a little house with, I think, an aide or two or something like that, and then he committed suicide in the house. The British intelligence...
Coward.
Yeah, like a coward. Kind of like Hermann Goering did, that fat bastard did. But he did it in the middle of the Nuremberg trials, and, he did it right before he was supposed to be hung. But beyond that, this guy was a legit sicko. You can do a whole bunch of research on this guy, but beyond that, none of the frontline soldiers knew that this guy was a war criminal. This guy is the war criminal. He's the architect of the final solution that ended up killing 11 million people. This guy was the actual guy, the architect behind that genocide, and he was able to make himself unrecognizable enough that he was able to slip through the lines, although many people, pretty much everyone knew what this guy looked like. He was able to slip through and then end up killing himself after he passed Allied soldiers and made it into pretty much a safe area. But with that, I hope that does address pretty well why the guy is being tried at all, and he wasn't, put out on the front lines, I guess is the best way to put it. But moving on from that, we also got to see some photos of the training of the GUR. And Matthew, you got this right yesterday. It wasn't the GRUL, it was the GUR. That is the Ukrainian special unit. But grr, and we can see him right here. I can't tell. Wait, they actually have a Daniel Defense M4. That's it right there, Matthew. Look at that.
Oh man, that's my rifle. Look at them out there. I'm telling you, man. The Ukrainian like special forces groups, they know how to pick their weapons. I'm telling you, like that's a really solid rifle.
Oh, and look at that. It's literally
it's kitted out like the same way that mine's kitted out too.
Yeah,
like, except for the scope. Like I have a much cheaper scope than that one. In fact, it's probably 10 times less expensive than that one, but it's close.
What is that, an ACOG?
It looks like it could be.
It looks like it might be, but I can't tell. That looks a little different. I don't know which one that one is. But dude, they really have that thing kitted out like yours. They even have the little stubby vertical foregrip. They don't have a broomstick handle, or anything like that. I mean,
yeah, if they were smart, they would get rid of that Magpool plastic crap right there and replace it with a metal one because those things break. Like I've seen them break.
And also, I just don't like them. I just don't like plastic mags. I honestly love metal mags, too. I think they're better. But still, great to see the GUR doing their thing with their Daniel Defense M4s. And that is 100% a Trichicon ACOG right there on that M4. Man, dude, I wish yours had an ACOG. You would literally have the Ukrainian GUR loadout. GUR. But anyways, moving on.
Man, that would cost like half the cost of the whole rifle to get an ACOG. That'd be crazy.
But they actually say... like in the gun world, I think this is like a statement that's only true in very few circumstances, but I've heard some people say that your optic should cost as much or more than the gun it's on. And that's been...
I guess it's if you got the money to buy it.
Yeah, I guess, but maybe Matthew will start an ACOG fund for your M4. But with that, we're moving on to some Challenger 2s in training. A lot of training stuff happened today, at least in picture and video evidence, and we got to see a Challenger 2 with slat armor on the sides doing some training. This is a part of the 82nd Separate Air Assault Brigade, which is the only unit that has Challenger 2s in the entire Ukrainian army. When you see one here pulling another out of the mud in training. And then in this last picture, we can see it roaring across the plains, of course, still conducting training. Overall, while I sit here and try and figure out why I'm choking, it is nice to see that the 82nd is still conducting training with their Challenger 2s and trying to make sure that their crews are as competent and as capable as possible. Moving on from that and into one of our last bits of Location Unknown news, we also got to see the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours.
Oh.
Boy, it was smoking.
They got 10 Bobcats. Let's go. But they ended up on a bad number, though. They should have gone one more. One more is all they needed. They ended up bad today. The Pope would not be pleased with this number.
Man, the Pope saw this number. He said, maybe it's time for a peace. That's what he said.
That's what did it.
But beyond that, 10 Bobcat skid steers were destroyed. 10 for Matt. And what a wonderful day. It's a perfect round number. It's well, not this number wonderful, but the actual losses over today were pretty wonderful. Nice, rounded, even losses. Overall, just nice. Love to see it. But the losses were very high in other categories. 850 Russian soldiers were knocked out over the past 24 hours, along with 25 armored personnel carriers, and a whopping unbelievable, and we're going to have to check with the records keeper here, Mstiisa, who keeps up the records incredibly well on this, 85 supply trucks, which may be the highest number of supply trucks destroyed in a single day. A single day. We're going to have to check with Mstiisa on that, because she usually has the running records for all that kind of stuff. So hopefully we'll get the actual juice from Mstiisa. But beyond that, 6 main battle tanks were destroyed. A whopping 53 artillery systems were destroyed today in counter battery activity. 43 drones were also destroyed, along with 2 MLRSs, 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and of course the 10 special equipment vehicles. Overall, today was an amazing day, and we love to see the Ukrainians were able to inflict such high losses on the Russians and keep the front lines held. They are holding them down incredibly well, and we got to give a huge credit to the Ukrainian armed forces that are doing a heroic job at defending Ukraine. But with that,
Great googly moogly. That
thing is juicy. That's a dude. That's a good one. I like that. But we are actually about to be moving on, Matthew, into that frontline news, that straight up pure juice. But before we get to that, there is a little story that I want to tell you all about today, because Zelensky, as many of y'all know, has been recommended by Zelensky to be the the Ukrainian ambassador to Britain. And a lot of people were hearing that and went, oh, that's great. But then today, an interesting statement came out that Zelensky was declared unfit for military service in Ukraine. Physically unfit, not mentally unfit, but physically unfit. And a lot of people kind of found that weird that they put that out publicly for some reason. A lot of people found that to be a little bit odd. And a lot of people have had some comments on that. As a matter of fact, thousands of people have had a lot of things to say about that. And Matthew, what do you think about that? And what are people saying about it?
So on the question of before being appointed as ambassador, General Zelensky was declared unfit to serve by Ukrainian doctors. And what are your thoughts? 58% said there's likely more to the story, 21% were unsure, and 14% said Zelensky wanted him disqualified. And on this one, to put it in perspective, basically what happened was Zelensky was taken away from his post. He stepped down and was replaced, and then he was declared unfit to serve. So he had no option to go back into the military, apparently. So he was sort of forced into this ambassador position that he was offered by Zelensky if he wanted to keep any position at all. That's the way I understand it. And to me, personally, honestly, I would have to say it sounds like Zelensky did not want him back in the military. And they sort of like made sure that there was a reason not to let him back in. I know that's speculation, but to me, it's a little bit too coincidental that at the moment he was replaced, he was also declared unfit, which prevented him from serving in the military, to my understanding. And considering the political tensions between Zelensky and Zelensky, that wouldn't be too far of a stretch. But of course, that's just my opinion. I'm sure other people are going to think differently about it. But, you know, with all that considered, Zelensky, the ambassador position might be the only place he goes from this point forward. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it is a little odd, considering that he had been removed. And a lot of people are saying that it's probably a legitimate thing. He probably has a legitimate medical issue. And maybe he does. But it is a little odd for them to come out and say that after the fact that he's not in the military anymore. He already was removed, not on medical reasons, but for other reasons, and has now been appointed to the ambassador's position. Now they're going to come out and say that he's not fit for military service. It seems a little odd, and I think it's probably a way that they're trying to tie the whole story together into a bow and explain why he couldn't ever come back into the Ukrainian military. Maybe so, because it is quite odd to throw out that fact when it's not necessarily pertinent anymore, because he's already becoming the ambassador to Britain. He's already been removed from the armed forces of Ukraine, being the chief of the armed forces, and he's already been replaced by Syrsky. So it is a little weird to, do something like that after all of this has happened. But still, it is what it is. It's not that big of a deal. He's already the ambassador. Syrsky is the new commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces. Things are going well. The Ukrainians are holding a good defense. Honestly, things are improving a little bit behind the scenes. Syrsky is starting to rotate units properly from what we can tell. There is a heavy emphasis on training, continued training, increased training. And I gotta say, not bad at all. It's not going badly. I think it's going actually a little bit better than it was even under Zelensky, but still a little bit weird to come out and say something like that after everything happened. But moving on from
I'm glad that it went smoothly, though, after Zelensky was removed, relieved, or whatever anyone wants to call it. I was worried that maybe that wasn't going to be a very smooth transition, but the new guy, what's his name again? Syrsky, isn't it?
Yeah, Oleksandr Syrsky.
Yeah, so Syrsky got in there and actually he took the job and took the reins and actually has done a very good job very quickly. And we knew some things about Syrsky, but we didn't know too much. But he's a very capable commander, and he actually, like you said, might be better than Zelensky when it comes to overall strategy.
Yeah, kind of. Zelensky was more of your brawler as far as the commander's mindset goes. He was the guy who got out there and beat ass. Syrsky's kind of the guy who's I guess you could say more of a logistician from what we can tell. He's more so focused on the rear line aspects of the Ukrainian armed forces, which in reality are actually the more important ones to tend to. The frontline strategy and things, it's important, yes, but it's not the most important thing. The supply side of things, rotations and everything else involved in training is a very important part of keeping an armed force running. It's more so the maintenance side of things that's the most laborious and most important side. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and it's time for us to start moving on into that frontline news. But before we do, we have had so many interesting questions, and I want to make sure that we're able to get to a few of them. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so first up, we have a very generous $100 donation, big support from Alex Scott. And thank you very much, Alex, for that support as well. And he says, do you think all this pressure from Pope to Russia for Ukraine to accept Russian peace deal will reduce U.S. support?
I don't think it will, because if we're talking about demographics here in America, most of the United States, if we're talking about, and of course I want to make this disclaimer, I'm not talking about religion and saying I support one group or the other or condemn a group. I will disclaim that I am a Christian, but that's that, and I'm not going to bring that into this channel. But as far as it goes with the United States, the majority of the United States is Protestant, not Catholic. So there's not really going to be a lot of sway that the Pope is going to have on the U.S. public or maybe even the U.S. legislative body or the government, because the majority of the United States doesn't even care what the Pope says on a religious level or on any level for that matter. I mean, me being one of those people, because I'm not a Catholic, so whatever he says, it doesn't really mean much for me. So going off of that, I would have to say that his impact on U.S. support is probably going to be slim to none. And also, most people sometimes say that the Pope actually has bad takes. I mean, it would be amiss of me to say that there haven't been instances in the past where he's been pretty controversial, because half of people agree with what he said and half of people disagree with what he said. Even Catholics get split down the middle sometimes on some of the stuff he says. And I think that this may be one of those instances, because a lot of people are very pro-Ukrainian, and the war isn't a religious war. It is a war about economics. It's a war about spheres of influence. It's a war that revolves around things outside of religion entirely. Religion plays a very, very small, if not non-existent role in the war in Ukraine. And so it seems to me that it probably isn't going to have any real impact on American support, at least in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, going off of the demographics, how that would affect the United States, stuff like that. I have a feeling that that's the way it would work out. It probably will have minimal to no effect here in the United States. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the massive support. The first time that you supported the channel, and it means a lot to us. And we got to thank you so much once again for finding this channel worthwhile to support for the first time ever, and not only that, enjoying the channel enough that you would support it that much. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well, and hopefully, stays outside of the religious aspect as best as possible, because we are always fervently making sure that there's no politics on this channel. But the Pope's comments were given so much credence today that we kind of have to go and address them. And I want to make this as clear as possible. I'm trying to address it as in neutral a stance as possible, kind of like how we go on people like, say, Elon Musk. We say we know he's a bit of a political figure, but removing his politics from who he is and just speaking about what he said today, that's what we're doing with the Pope. We're not making any comment on religion. We're making a comment on his direct statements. And in that instance, since you asked about, is that going to have any impact on America, then, for that one instance, we have to bring up the issue of demographics. How many people are Catholic in the United States versus not Catholic? And when you look at that, the impact is quite minuscule. But with that, I hope that does address that quite well. And thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Hokey Redneck, who is a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Hokey, for that $100 donation. Massive support as well, and we appreciate it very much. And he says, so you were talking optics last night, and what is your opinion of Swarovski, I think it said?
Swarovski.
And I have... Swarovski, whatever. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It says, I have that on my 270 WSM, and I have a spotting scope. And I've actually never heard of them making optics, by the way. I've heard of them making, I think, jewelry, because we have a family member that does that, and I've heard that name somewhere in the jewelry world, but didn't know they made optics, though. I wonder if they're any good.
Well, do I have a story for you, Matthew? Yeah, this is gonna be a rough one to tell. This isn't something that no one really knows much about in Swarovski's history. And I'm trying to figure out how in the world am I gonna go around.
They sound a little
talking about it.
Russian.
No, actually, they're Czech, believe it or not.
Oh.
And so here's the best way that I can explain it. Let me just go to the Wikipedia page and show y'all a section of Swarovski's company history. You see history right here, and then the second section, Nazi period.
Oh, no.
Oh no, they're one of those companies. So to best explain this, it was a Czech company, and when the Czech Republic got annexed by the Germans after they took the Sudetenland and then just annexed the rest of Czechoslovakia, the Swarovski company ended up falling under the control of the Nazi Germans, and just before that happened, they had started to produce a small amount of optics, scopes and things like that. And then during the war, they found out that supplying scopes and optics to the Germans was actually a pretty damn good way to make money. And so they just started making loads of them. And they actually ended up creating a pretty successful side business. I'm going to see if I can find y'all a Swarovski optic here. It's not on this Wikipedia page, but let me go to Swarovski optics. Because that's something that no one knows about the company, is that they had a dark side in history. And unlike other companies like FN, because believe it or not, FN Herstal, a very famous gun company, actually also produced guns for the Nazi Germans. The Belgian company was taken over in 1940 by the Nazi Germans, and the Nazi Germans ordered that FN Herstal was to remain open as a factory and produce weapons for the German war effort. They said that all the workers were going to have to return back to work and begin to produce the weapons, and when the factory opened and that order was given, only 10% of the workers showed back up. 90% of them refused to make weapons for the Germans. And then, because of that, the Germans decided to go get a whole bunch of Jews and turn FN Herstal over the course of the war into a Jewish slave labor factory. Meaning that the guys who were working at FN Herstal during that time, along with the Nazis who were running the slave labor camp of a factory at that point, were all tried for war crimes at the end of the war. And after that, FN Herstal has had very bad relations deliberately with the German government. Even later on in the 1950s and 60s, refusing to allow the Germans to license build the FN FAL, or the FN FAL, leading the Germans to develop the G3 and ditch the FAL because they couldn't produce them domestically inside of Germany. Just to give you all a little bit of history about companies in Europe and their relations to the Nazi Germans. While FN Herstal absolutely hated the Nazis and hated everything that they did during the war and made sure to distance themselves as far as possible from the Germans even after the Nazis fell, Swarovski was actually pretty chill with doing things for the Nazis and ended up just continuing to produce optics after the war was over. So really quickly, I'm actually going to get out here to their rifle scopes.
No, I can't help it, but every time you say F and Herstal and you say it in like a sentence, it sounds like you're angry and you're like cussing some Herstal fella out. Like I can't unhear that anymore.
Man, F and Herstal.
Man, F and Herstal.
But beyond that, I'm actually going to show you all their website, because this is it. Here are Swarovski scopes. Like, they're actually made by the Swarovski company.
Do we have a price tag on any of these bad boys?
Hi, well, let's check out the Z6. Do we have a price? Holy smokes!
Oh, dear Lord. That's
Goodness.
why I've never seen them, because they're out of my price range by a lot. Somebody said, you haven't been looking at scopes for a little while if you haven't heard of those. I'm like, well, damn, I can't go out and buy a $3,000 scope. Good Lord.
I mean, that's insane. 2,600 euros. That's like 3,000 US dollars for this one. Jeez.
They better be good for that price.
Well, hell, these prices are criminal. It looks like they're still holding over some of that, Nazi influence from the war, because this is just straight up literally criminal to this kind of pricing. But beyond that, I would have to be honest with you, Hokey Redneck. I've heard of Swarovski optics. I've known about them and didn't know about their price. I didn't know that they were as expensive as a Zeiss scope would be, or I think even more expensive than that. So I would have to be honest with you. At this price, I'd have to assume that they're made of gold and that you can see around the curvature of the earth with these things. But I wouldn't actually know from personal experience, because I've never been able to use a Swarovski scope or shoot a rifle with one attached. So I would have absolutely no idea. But now that y'all brought it up, it would be kind of cool to have a Swarovski scope. But honestly, I think I'm going to stick to iron sights, because pretty much all the guns I shoot, I just shoot iron sights. I feel like it's kind of a good thing, a real deal. Just really enjoy it, all the way through and through, time and time again. Just love shooting iron sights. It's the funnest way to shoot, in my opinion. But scopes are great. And the only scope I have is a PSO scope, Romanian one at that. But with that, I hope that does address that well, Hokey, because I can't even tell you how good of an optic that is compared to others, because my experience with optics is very slim, and on top of that, I mostly shoot iron sights, and I've never been able to get an optic that is that expensive. So with that, thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support and helping this channel to keep on running. But Hokey, I'm assuming that you have a gun that would blow any of my guns out of the water with an optic like that. That is insane. And of course, BC Skyman has a Zeiss. He's like, I have Zeiss. Dang, it's just a dang, BC Skyman.
You have his ice?
Oh my lord, and oh my lord. BC Skyman, you gotta have like tens of thousands of dollars in scopes. That is crazy. And also, Dante said, are you paying for the brand name? I've found that you don't, actually. I found that you actually do pay for the quality that you get in the gun world, because we do have an FN M4A1 here in the house. And all the way up until then, I always believed that the FN company was purely a brand name thing that you were buying into, until I actually got one and started using it, and I found out that there is actual quality in the FN Herstal brand. They are very good as far as the rifles go, and you can tell a difference in between an FN Herstal and like a DPS Panther or something like that, or a Palmetto State Armory. There is an actual difference in the quality that you pay for, and that M4 does have a Trigicon ACOG on it. It's the only rifle I actually have an optic on beyond the one with the PSO, and the Trigicon ACOG, Matthew can tell you, is a scope worth envying. It is an amazing optic.
Man, that thing is super nice. I mean, the price tag's crazy, but it's probably worth it if you can get it. But I'm in the same camp as Riddle Me This in the live chat. He said, I'm good with my $350 Holosun red dot, and I can even outdo you on that. I have the Sig Sauer Romeo 5 red dot, one of the cheapest red dots you can find on my Daniel. Like, a nice gun, but I put the cheapest optic you can possibly find on the gun because I cheaped out on that. But one day I hope to upgrade it from that. Maybe a Holosun, or maybe hopefully an EOTech. That's what I'm looking for. But no, the $1,000 scopes and above, that's just like, I've never really felt like getting those. And
I would have to be honest, beyond that, once you get a taste of a very well-made product, you really fall for them. Like, I'm gonna be honest, after getting that FN M4, I absolutely love FN. I'm a huge believer in FN actually being a high-quality company that is top of the line as far as the stuff they come out with. And
HK is good too.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that HK is really, well, actually we know that HK is good thanks to Jay Bagwell. He let us shoot an HK MP5, and that was incredible. The brand names actually have something behind them in the gun world. It's not just paying for the brand name. You're actually getting what you're buying out of it. And I would assume that Swarovski scopes have to be incredible as far as they go, because the price on them is insane. And you usually, as far as I can tell in my experience in the gun world, you pay for what you get. And so I'd have to assume that Swarovski scopes are actually some of the best out there by their price. But with that,
generally speaking, though, in the gun world, if any gun manufacturer starts with 2 letters as their name, like HK or FN, like, the price is about to be through the roof, but you're paying for what you get.
Or if it starts with any kind of a crazy name, like, what is it, Q or whatever the hell it is?
Yeah, that's the only gun I've ever splurged on, is the Honey Badger. That is the most expensive thing I own outside of my computer. And it was worth every penny. It was a really crazy stupid financial decision to make, but it was worth it, man. That thing is so nice. Like, the Honey Badger is a legendary gun. The guy's a little bit kooky that runs the company, though, but it's a cool gun.
Man, there's always some kooky guy running every company. It's just a fact of life. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support, Hokey Redneck. I hope we were able to go down a sufficient rabbit hole on optics and my complete lack of experience on really any optic. But I always believe in the trusty iron sight. I sadly wouldn't be able to talk about Swarovski at all from experience. But still, thank you so much once again. And also, thank you for giving us the offer that when you're in Alabama, you would offer to let us shoot your rifle with a Swarovski on it. That is incredibly nice of you. And if you ever are in Alabama, maybe we can look into seeing about doing that possibly. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting back into the news.
All right, and the last one goes to Thomas Marsh, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Thomas, very much for that very generous support as well. He says, sorry to have been missing, and keep up the good fight, and we shall.
And it is A-OK. It is perfectly fine to be missing here and there. There's nothing wrong about that at all. And I got to thank you so much once again for appreciating this channel, wanting it to keep running, Thomas, and of course, helping us to keep this channel running so that way we can keep fighting the good fight. It's incredible to know that you enjoy the channel enough to support it, and I gotta thank you so much once again, because it does mean a great deal, and folks like you make this channel possible, make everything we're doing possible. And speaking of which, you know, I don't want to drag out this question segment too much longer, because it has been going on for a good minute, but to give you a little bit of an update, we just got in a good bit of our merchandise prototypes today. And they were amazing. They're on our Patreon. We have them over there for all the patrons. And huge shout out to the patrons who are on there. Thank you all so much for joining the Patreon. But we posted it over there, and we were able to get some really cool stuff: a mug, a pillow, and also a towel, all with the LSA Eagle printed onto them, and it all looks great. Those merch lines are not going to be going out here soon. Those were just prototyping to make sure that we were working with good distributors and stuff like that, but the quality is through the freaking roof. We were just blown away of how nice it looks.
Super impressive quality. And also, I did spend most of the day today becoming a sales tax expert, which is a nightmare and a half to figure all that stuff out. So, like, it's been a long day of just reading monotonous tax like books and stuff like that, trying to figure out how to charge taxes. It's complicated to pay the government, you know. It's like they want a cut of everything, and they make it complicated as hell to pay them. Like, it's kind of weird. But the merch store is coming along pretty good. Like, we solved all that today, got those merch samples in, and solved a couple of other things with the store as well to try to get our international audience able to buy a flag when it comes out. And we've resolved most of our problems up until now, but that's been pretty much my task all day long, has been figuring out the merch store, and it probably will tomorrow as well after we make the short war video. But it's very fun. I like to do it.
And we love to do it. And also, by the way, I see many people asking about plushie marmots. Marmot plushies are, I cannot confirm nor deny, but plushie marmots are in the itinerary. They may not be soon, though. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Not trying to get anyone hyped or anything, but they're cool. But moving on from that and into the rest of our news for the night, starting off on our Frontline news, it's time for us to move into the Northeast, where we got to see a Slovenian MS-55 in Ukraine. The MS-55 is a heavily modified, heavily upgraded T-55 main battle tank. These have been used by the Russian Federation, but not in this modernized form. The M55 has a modern Western main gun, a 105mm main gun inside of the turret. Not only that, it also has modern reactive armor built onto the turret as well, and it has modern optics and sights. It is as modernized as a T-55 can get. It is still a T-55. A T-55 is a T-55, but this is about the best one that you'll see out there on the battlefield. And we can see one here in use with the 5th Brigade up in the northeastern area of the front. Moving on from that and towards Taganrog, we also got to see an Archer SPG doing a little bit of shooting and scooting, which was very impressive to see. We see that thing rolling in, setting up.
That's basically a Volvo dump truck.
Yeah, it's really cool though. I like it. We hear the gun loading, firing.
Damn.
Loading again and firing. All of that mechanical noise you're hearing is the autoloader working inside of this turret down here to load the gun and fire it. And they're done. They will now begin to stow the gun and get the hell out of there. That thing is a masterpiece.
Never thought I'd see a Volvo dump truck used quite like that, but it's a good sight.
You just got to think about that though. Isn't it's just insane to think that the Swedes made an artillery. They made the most streamlined wheeled SPG ever seen in the world right now. This is the most streamlined it gets. There is pretty much no crew involved in the operation of an Archer SPG, and I just want to make sure that I have this correct. How many crew members there are for the Archer? Let's see here. A deployed Archer development. Let me go here. Archer SPG crew. So let's see. What's the range? I believe that the Archer has like 1 or 2 crew members, but in this clip we only saw the 1, which was really interesting to see. I believe the Archer has a very small amount of crew members, which is great because you can field more of these while having to train less crew, which takes less time, makes it more efficient, and not only that, this thing is the master of the shoot and scoot strategy that the artillery employs. Moving on from that, and further down the line and into the Kremenna area, we also got to see a Russian 2S4 Tulpan getting hit and destroyed near the area of Kremenna. It was actually geolocated up here in the caption, so we were able to geolocate it here on the map. So here it is. There's the Tulpan. They're showing us what the Tulpan looks like right there. Here comes the drone. And smacking down right on the mortar. And I bet you there's going to be an ammo cook-off here pretty quickly, because the ammunition is actually stored on top of the Tulpan. It looks like it actually didn't. The Tulpan's still sitting. Wait a minute, there is a fire. We can see a fire right there at the end. Right, oh man, the camera moved. Right there, that little weird whitish area, that is a fire. So that Tulpan will hopefully burn down and end up being a pile of cinders. But moving on from that, that's all the footage that we got from the Kremenna area. Once again, no friendly advances, no Russian ground taken. The Ukrainians are still holding an incredible defense. Moving on from that and down into the area of Bakhmut, we did get to see near Yehidne, the Ukrainians conducting some decent drone attacks on Russian forces in the area. This is right on the northeastern side of the city of Bakhmut. And we can see the drone starting to chase the Russian vehicle here and coming down on its attack run. And boom, right there, hitting it in the back of the turret, knocking that thing out. Good googly moogly, that thing is burning.
It's juicy.
Man, that thing do be juicy. And you know what's really about to be juicy? The way this drone strikes right into the side armor of that thing. Oh my lord. And look, it's on fire. It's going out. It's done.
You know it's got to suck to be a Russian.
You know it really does. And you know what else is pretty wild? And oh, wow, look at that. That fire's good. Wait a minute, look at that. The drive wheel in the back is going ham. Look at that. That thing is spinning at full speed.
It sure is.
Dang. That thing was torqued up. Beyond that, that's the end of that clip. Slow, and that was showing us a little bit of the action going on near Yehidne. However, moving us a little bit further south towards Glashkivka brings us a very nice treat from United 24, an incredible group that's been doing incredible work for Ukraine and is, of course, attached to the Ukrainian government. They were able to talk about and make a special documentary on the CV90s, or the STRF 9040s, that are in Ukrainian service here in the present day and have been for quite a while. Before we get to that, however, I do have to give a massive shout out for everyone who is here right now. It is an hour and 30 minutes into the stream, and there are 6,000 people here. Crazily enough, that isn't even the peak. The peak tonight was 7.5 thousand people. But I still got to thank 6,000 of y'all for being here with us at this point in the news. If y'all are enjoying it, please consider hitting the like button, because it does help out this channel a little bit, and also subscribe if you want. Not to, do a merciless plug, but considering that there's so many new people here tonight, I just thought I'd let y'all know. We would love to see y'all subscribe.
That was a ruthless plug.
That was a ruthless one, and I'm trying to make it sound less ruthless, and then you just slammed it right on. You're like, that's ruthless, man. But if y'all enjoy it, subscribe, hit the like button. It does help out the channel. But nevertheless, let me move y'all into this amazing clip made by United 24 talking about the incredible, beautiful CV90. Beautiful.
Some might say that we are riding the best infantry fighting vehicle ever made. Some might disagree. Nevertheless, it's a Swedish Street Sword 90 or CV90, and I'm very interested to hear how it performs on the Ukrainian battlefield.
It was hit by a Lancet, but it withstood. Similarly, we had a CV90 hit by an anti-tank mine. It was hit right in the side of the tracks, and the vehicle also withstood. The crew came out, of course, a little shell-shocked, but alive. And what's the most important thing here? It's life.
Student has just turned 22. That's where his call sign comes from. Instead of getting a degree, he now studies the art of war. Starting his military career as a commander of a Soviet-made BMP-1, he upgraded drastically to the Swedish IFV. Incidentally, his CV was produced in 2002, the year he was born.
In comparison, the BMP-1 that we used to work on was a tin can. And the CV90 is a reliable, good machine.
What's so special about this machine?
What's special is that the Russians put an extra large target on our backs. On these particular vehicles, as well as the Leopards and Archers, the Russians will deploy a T-90M breakthrough when they notice a CV on a combat mission.
One of the key features of the CV90 is its modular design, which allows for easy adaptation to various roles and missions. The most common is the AFV option, which is to transport fighting infantry safely across the battlefield. It is also this variant that has been delivered to Ukraine. According to the crew, it performs great with tasks like long-range attacks, fire support, assault missions, delivery of the assault troops and wounded evacuation. Adding to that, it's quite easy to operate.
Can a regular person drive CV90?
Sure.
That's
Yes, I'll show
easily,
you where
yeah.
the toggle
That's
switch is and
easily,
how to turn
no
it
doubt.
on. It has an automatic transmission. You can turn it on and drive.
No way, no damn way does this thing... Dude, did you hear that? This thing has an automatic transmission. An infantry fighting vehicle with an automatic transmission.
Man, if you're a real man, you'll want the manual.
Hell, dude, who cares? Like, who cares? Dude,
It's a car joke, by the way.
I
It's
know.
not serious.
I
You
know.
don't want your arms and your legs to get tired out by a clutch.
but dude, like, think about that. Though, all jokes aside, and all jokes aside from me just throwing that out the window, but that's crazy, man. The luxury of having an automatic transmission in an IFV, unheard of anywhere in the world. That's actually nice.
Swedish
That is a
designs
luxury.
never disappoint. CV has been around since the 90s and it still looks very cool. Although of course being cool is not its primary goal. Also you may notice this Saab Barracuda camouflage system. It's a very interesting technology. It hides infrared and thermal traces besides providing visual concealment.
We work mostly at night, and we are barely seen in night vision cameras. If we're shooting at a target directly, we also have night vision. We have a laser to measure the distance to the target, and we can work from there. Basically for us, there's no difference whether it's night or day.
The 40mm autocannon on the CV is a powerful tool, and the units here have taught themselves to maximize its use. For example, to perform indirect fire at targets up to 7 kilometers away, something they didn't learn from their Swedish instructors. All of these features definitely put CV90 among the top-ranked IFVs. According to the Ministry of Defense, Ukraine is teaming up with Sweden to produce 1,000 new CV90s, and the soldiers here are looking forward to their deployment here in the east of Ukraine.
I can't wait to see him.
It also matters a lot what kind of crew you have. I have a crew of a mechanic, driver, and gunner. Brave young guys. A lot depends on their motivation, whether they're ready to do it. What's your motivation? To liberate our country. To drive out the enemy.
Heroic aims. And there they go. Oh man, I love those. That is my favorite, one of my favorite infantry fighting vehicles. It's the Bradley and the CV90, two of the best ones in Ukraine that have been given by Western countries. But still, moving on from that and out of the Bakhmut area, it's time for us to get down towards Avdiivka, where we got to see near Berdichi, abandoned Leopard 2A4 and a YPR 765 near the front lines. While they are abandoned, of course, they did a lot of work under the command of the 47th Brigade, and we can see the holdovers of that here. There's the YPR. And we can see the rear of the engine bay here of the Leopard 2. It appears the Leopard 2 may have been stricken at some point and caught fire. When you see that the suspension and the road wheels have been burned out. And we can also see that the Ukrainians further modified the Leopard 2s that were in service with Contact 1 explosive reactive armor tiles along the sides. Very similar to a T-72B. And if I'm correct, if I remember the story about how these Leopards ended up out here, one of them was a Leopard 2A4 that ended up getting disabled, mobility disabled, and a Bergpanzer, which is built off of a Leopard 2A4 hull, but does not have an actual turret, came out here to attempt to recover it, came under artillery fire, was damaged, and then also subsequently abandoned at the same location, and that's how both of these Leopard 2 hulls ended up out here in this field. See them walking along one of them here. And we can see the other side of the Leopard 2. But once again, not really giving us a good enough look at the turrets where we can really tell if one of them is a Bergpanzer and the other one is a Leopard 2. Like a standard Leopard 2 main battle tank. When we see him giving a pretty good look at the YPR. And that's the end of the clip, but showing us a little bit of some of the abandoned vehicles up in the northern area of the Avdiivka battlefield. Moving on from that, we got to see two Mi-24 Hinds firing rockets in the area of Avdiivka in support of Ukrainian forces. We see them flying low and fast over the area, tilting up, and sending their rockets on their way. Now they're going to bank hard left and pop off their flares and get out of there.
I love those helicopters. They're so menacing looking.
Oh, they are, aren't they? Dude, these are some of the coolest ones. I'm not going to lie. Even to this day. To this day!
You see that piece of crap fall off of the back of it, though? It just fell in the water?
Where?
Go back a little. Yeah, play from right here. Watch the water. Some piece of crap. Do you see that?
Huh, yeah, it was like a carbon deposit or something. It was like solid
or like
black.
a piece of metal.
Oh, wait, almost got it. Oh, almost got it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it looks like... Huh, I don't know what that is.
A piece of the helicopter.
Wait. I know what this is. Okay, so this is the landing gear here, I believe, of the Mi-24. Well, no. Actually, I think that should be fully recessed into the hull. So let me go check that, or the fuselage is what it would actually be called. Mi-24 landing gear. Because the Mi-24's landing gear are retractable. So let me see if I can find the landing gear pulled in. Because I think it should be completely hidden inside of the helicopter. Okay, now I have it. What we're looking at is the front landing gear, and the helicopters of the Ukrainian Armed Forces actually operate out of field landing zones. So they're not actual tarmacs or anything, it's just grass. So I think what we're seeing right here is a piece of grass or mud or something fall off of the front landing gear in flight. Because look at it, it comes right off of the front landing gear right here. And there it goes. And you see little sprigs of grass sticking out, so it looks like it's dirt.
I think you're right.
Man, that took a lot of sleuthing right there, like 20 seconds to try and figure that out. But with that...
Yeah, as long as the helicopter's not falling to pieces, I guess they're good. They can handle some mud.
Yeah, it was just mud. So we cleared that up, y'all. It is just mud, and the helicopter is A-okay and still running just fine. Moving on from that, we also got to see a bit of a phantom of a form of footage. This is footage from when the 3rd Brigade was still inside of Avdiivka and the Ukrainians were controlling the city, and showing us a little bit more of the combat actions that happened way back then, over a month ago. But here's the clip.
Вправо! Дальше! Вот в те дома. Какие? Вот впереди.
See them moving through the rubble of northeastern Avdiivka.
They've got a wolf and a strange symbol for their logo.
Yeah, it's actually the symbol of the asshole.
Looks different in that patch for some reason.
That's a little different. And we see them trying to figure out what they're doing next. Huh, interesting muzzle device on an AK.
Да, бля. 876, нету укрытий. 876, нету укрытий вообще. Блять. Парни, зайдите, возьмите сектора.
You see them moving through the buildings, pretty much reduced to rubble at this point. See them taking a moment here as the shelling continues outside. And riddle me this, I wonder if people do know, because even even small size plates of level 4 armor are pretty heavy. I believe they're, let me think, like 20 pounds a plate, so about 40 pounds for the whole plate pack, front and back.
Those guys are hauling a ton of weight.
Oh yeah, loads of it.
Дед, а мы отсюда потом выберемся? Мы не выберемся отсюда. Тут немає виходу, а там виход. А там виход є.
Да, надо передвигаться.
Идем туда.
You see them moving through a basement here. There's some kind of a fire going on down here. It's a Bunsen burner actually on the floor. And we see them all congregating here around the Bunsen burner. And Oki, level 4 ought to be just fine for AK fire. I mean, that's way more than fine. I think you can actually work with a level 3 or a level 3A plate, and that ought to be able to stop 7.62 or 5.45. But I think 7 and 6 has a little bit of extra velocity behind it, and level 3 might not be good enough, so level 3A would be better, and level 4 is, of course, optimal. A level 4 plate, in theory, according to the National Institute of Justice here in America, which is the one that classifies the level of armor plate here in America, says that a level 4 plate should be able to withstand one 30-06 armor-piercing round directly dead center of the plate and survive it. So that is the highest armor level rating I think you can practically get out there at this point. I think there is level 5, but that's pretty much non-existent and in some kind of prototyping stage at this point technologically. But moving on from that and out of the Avdiivka battlefield, it's time for us to move down to Marinka and show y'all a little clip of a damaged T90M that has some very interesting contact armor on top of the turret. From what we can tell, it looks like a lot of contact 1 ERA tiles that would be put onto older tanks, but it looks like this T90M crew attempted to put them on top of their T90's turret to stop it from becoming such an easy drone casualty. Still ended up being a casualty nonetheless and knocked out. But nevertheless, it looks like a new kind of a strategy for the Russians to attempt to strengthen the armor of the roofs of the turrets. Moving on from that, and further down the line and into the southern front, we also got to see today that there was a Challenger 2 in southern Ukraine, once again attached to the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, or the Air Assault Brigade. We got to see it right there in the fields. Very nice to see. Moving on from that and into the area of Robotny, we once again got to see another failed Russian attack occurring in this area. Chad music ensues. We can see the BTR rolling up, and it's about to roll out. And there it goes. It just rolled out. We can now see a Russian tank throwing a crew member off, or a infantryman, and we can see another tank getting blown up. All of these vehicles are getting destroyed by the 79th Brigade.
Oh.
Oh. Oh.
Great
my
googly moogly. That man was Googling.
Man, I'm telling you what. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Very interesting to see. And with that, we're moving on into our next one, where we also got to see a Chinese ATV get blown up. There's the ATV. It's just moving around. It's probably moving out. Oh, there it goes. And I see that someone in the chat has said that we're barbarians, Matthew and me, because earlier in the channel, I recommended that possibly there should be an exception to the ban of the death penalty in Ukraine for war criminals, and they're saying that apparently we're American barbarians because we believe in death penalties in certain instances. And to actually give you all an honest outlook at how I look at death penalties, especially so far, covering this war, I have visually watched on doing this job tens of thousands of people get killed in brutal ways that are absolutely reprehensible, ways that still sicken me to my core, to think that people would be vile enough to murder people in such a way, not just in the scope of the war, because people die all the time in war, but to go out of their way to torture and execute prisoners of war and to conduct war crimes on innocent civilians is something that I will never be able to forget. And it has certainly made me a believer that some crimes are so heinous that there should be the penalty of death in pursuant to the crime being committed. You kind of reap what you sow, to take what Peter Sommer said in the live chat about that. You kind of reap what you sow a little bit, and the world is a brutal place. And I believe that some people, like Russian war criminals, should face the death penalty. And I'm just going to say this is a good argument for something like that. Should Hitler have gotten, if he survived the war and was actually captured by the Allies, should he have gotten life in prison, or should he have been hung at Nuremberg? I say he should have been hung at Nuremberg. I say that all war criminals, if their crimes are serious enough, that don't just warrant prison time, should be executed. I feel like it's an appropriate punishment. That's just my opinion.
And also, I know it's outside of the context just a little bit, but to the contrary of the guy's point, the Ukrainians are basically giving the death penalty to the Russian soldiers on the battlefield. I know they're not going through the whole prosecution process, but, under his logic, the death penalty is so barbaric that they shouldn't even fight their war to defend their land because it's so barbaric to put people to death. Well, there's some things you have to sometimes resort to that, in that case, in war, to defend your land. So it's like, you can take that to extremes as well. But, honestly, though, like there's arguments to be had for both sides. Like some crimes are so heinous, the death penalty might be warranted. I know there's an argument for the contrary as well, but to say it's like, outrageous to think there shouldn't be one or should be one is a little bit crazy.
I have to say this as well really quickly, because someone said, isn't the death penalty kind of a political thing? Kind of, sorta. It's not as major a political thing as many others at this point in time. It used to be like 2 decades ago when I was a kid. It was actually a big deal. But there is equal, or I'm going to say this, I don't believe completely in the death penalty, or I'm completely against it, because everyone makes pretty fair arguments in support of the death penalty and in the abolishment of the death penalty, because there are times where the death penalty has been abused and people who were completely innocent have been put to death, and there are other times where death was even a light punishment for the crimes that some people had committed. It's it's a very gray area when it comes to that. And I'm not going to tell you all, that I believe completely in one thing or the other, but I will say in the particular instance, and also I won't tell you all I believe in one thing or the other, because it is a little bit of a political topic after all, and I don't want to get into trying to make a complete comment on that on a broad umbrella. But in the particular instance of dealing with war criminals, I certainly do believe that whether your nation believes in the death penalty or not on a legal level, there should be the punishment of death for war criminals, because crimes that are committed in war, especially sometimes just the scale of crimes that can be committed in war, are so heinous. I believe that death, even if it's considered unacceptable as a form of punishment. Almost every other circumstance should be considered an acceptable form of punishment in that singular instance. That's really more so what I'm trying to say. But with that, we're moving on into the area of Sherbiaki, where we got to see some brand new Ukrainian defenses being laid down. And these are as World War I-like as they can get. There are actually 3 trench lines here. They have a forward trench. They have, I believe this would be the support trench, and then they have the comms trench in the back. This is a World War I layout as I've ever seen it before. Really interesting to see, and it looks like the Ukrainians, a lot like the Russians, are digging in and getting ready to hold out in this area, a lot like the Russians are. And so in all honesty, I'm expecting that throughout the rest of the war, there's going to be no frontline movements in Zaporizhia. If it happens, it is going to have to be a monumentous occurrence, and it's probably going to be a very small land gain at that. But moving on from that, it's time for us to move all the way down to the area around Krinky, where we got to see the air defense going up against a drone. Look at this air defense. Boy, they're really going at it.
Not the Popeye shirt and a cigarette.
Блядь.
He's Popeye.
But that's the end of the clip. But showing some brand new Russian air defense going up against the Ukrainian drones. But moving on from that and out of the area, it's time for us to go up to Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 745 of the war. And so,
I wish you health, fellow Ukrainian.
Hang on. So I guess he just stopped making speeches on the 7th, because there still is no speech today. No speech from President Zelensky on the 9th of March. So that brings us straight out of the speech and on. I'm telling you all what, it saddens me. I hate that we don't get to see a speech. It's the 2nd time in a row. But it's time for us to move on into them questions that we've asked y'all, and the questions y'all are asking us, because it is time for the second part of this stream, and it is a free-for-all during this segment. Y'all can talk about whatever y'all want, and we can talk about whatever we want as well, of course still pertaining to the rules of no politics and things like that. But what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we do have a poll left to address, and it says, at this point in the war, do you think Ukraine will survive with the new level of global support? And the majority say yes, Ukraine will survive just fine, while 31% said yes, but they will struggle a little bit, and 8% said no, Ukraine will start faltering. And me personally, I think the new level of support is going to be lower from the United States for a little while, but I think Europe is going to step in and basically fill that void. And good on them for doing so. And it looks like France and several other countries, maybe not Germany, but some other ones, are going to step up and really start ramping up the amount of aid they send to Ukraine, which is a good thing. And even though Germany is being a little bit coy with the Taurus missiles at the moment, they're liable to change their mind in the future and actually send them a little bit later on when the war progresses a little bit further. But for right now, they're off the table. But like I said, I'm confident they'll be just fine. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have a feeling that Ukraine will probably be fine. It's not the support that they would want, it's not the support I don't think they should get. I think they should get more, but they're going to do well with it for a while until the support comes back around. And I know that many people are not optimistic about the support coming back. I promise y'all, I guarantee y'all, if there is anything I know, it's that the support will continue. I'm not going to explain why, because there's really no good way for me to explain that. But it will come back. It's just a matter of time. But moving on from that, and getting into will Ukraine be fine or not, they will be fine. They're doing well right now. They're doing well with a limited amount of support. There will be more support coming in. There will be an increase. It's just not going to be an American-sized increase for a while, but they'll still do fine. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And it's time for us, Matthew. It's time for us to move on into them live chat questions and talk to all the folks about the super chats, the live chats, and everything in between.
All right, so moving into our super chats, we have a very generous $50 donation from the Bosun, LSA, Walter A. Lakota Jr. It says Walter, and thank you very much, Walter, for that very generous support as well. And he says, Aloha, the Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun. He says some fun facts. The quote, a pound of flesh, comes from Shakespeare's play, Merchant of Venice, and the nautical term, heave round, means to take a turns on bits or a cleat.
And thank you for the support, Walter A. Lakota, and sharing with us some interesting historical facts and tidbits. You know I love the historical facts and tidbits, Walter A. Lakota, and I gotta appreciate that you're kind of just our fun fact guy in general now. I like that. And really quickly, let me make sure that I can get this, some fun facts. To quote, a pound of flesh. Let's see. A pound of flesh. Interesting. I haven't actually used that quote much. I was trying to read that and understand it. And I've heard it before. I think I've heard it several times in my life, but I've never actually used that quote myself. And Matthew, have you ever used it before and you know what it means?
Pound of flesh. No, I've actually never heard that, actually, ever in my life.
Well, let me pull it up. A pound of flesh incorporated next to...
Incorporated? What they do for work?
Let's see here. Let's see. Hang on, let's move on from that because I just found out that company ain't necessarily the greatest. Oh dear. Oh dear. But beyond that, let's see. What does the phrase "a pound of flesh" mean? You mean that they insist on getting something they are entitled to, even though it may cause distress to the person it is demanded from. So interesting. I've never actually used that quote before, Walter A. Lakota, and that is interesting to hear that it came from a Shakespeare play. Actually, a lot of modern English phrases come from Shakespeare, like burning the midnight oil and a couple of others. But still, nautical term heave round means to take turns on bits or a cleat. That's interesting. I didn't know that either. Walter A. Lakota, you're sharing many phrases I've rarely ever used, but now I know the meaning behind them and where they came from. And I love to share those kinds of facts, because you just have to have historical facts that you can throw at people whenever you need to. And Walter, you're helping me with that. Thank you for supporting the Fun Fact Fund, and not only that, helping me to have more fun facts to fun fact with, because it is fun to fun fact. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for giving us a special visit from none other than the OG Ellison Bosun. And we're on to the next one. Oh.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Hokey Redneck, who has already put in a super chat tonight. He throws in a second one. And thank you very much, Mr. Redneck, sir, for that support. He says, Andrew and or Matt, can either of you drive a manual? And I can't drive a manual car. I've ridden a motorcycle. I used to have one of those. But I've been trying to get my hands on a manual car ever since high school, and it hasn't ever worked out because basically I'm told it's an automatic because manual is not that practical, I guess you could say. But I've always wanted a manual car, and I've never gotten my hands on one. I've never driven one either, but I want to. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, sadly, I cannot drive a manual. I've never even been able to get in a manual car to drive one. So sadly, that knowledge is lost on me. And I know many people here have driven a manual. I saw that earlier in the live chat. And a lot of people are going to be like, the kids these days, I'm sorry, the technology has moved on. I don't know how to take care of a horse either. The technology progresses. And one day, you won't even have to push down the gas. The cars will probably just be driverless, and then I'll be talking about the next generation saying, these damnable kids can't drive a car, you know, then I'll be saying something like that about them. It's just the way the world goes, especially with how quickly technology progresses these days. But still, sadly, to answer your question, Hokey Redneck, I have never driven a manual, so I wouldn't know how to drive one. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for the incredible support, Hokey Redneck, and not only sharing with us and flexing on us that you have a Swarovski optic, but also flexing on Matthew that you could drive a manual and we can't. Neither of us can. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well indeed, sir. And thank you once again for being Hokey Redneck, an old god and an absolute channel legend. And thank you for appreciating this channel so much that you find it worthwhile to support and help it to keep rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Moity Movies, who puts in a $20 donation. And they making a return to the channel. They're a channel legend as well. And thank you very much, Moity, for that support. He says, you guys are amazing, and your reviews and analysis are excellent. And thank you very much for that. He says, keep up the good mission.
And thank you so much, Moity Movies. Absolute legend. And thank you so much for enjoying our reviews and analysis. It is great to know that you enjoyed it and you want us to keep up the good mission. And I thank you so much for being here with us, Moity, because you've been around here forever, Moity. And it's cool to know that you're still here, still enjoying the channel, and still supporting it so that way we can keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well while I stutter my way through that last sentence. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again.
All right, and also real quick, by the way, I just realized I meant to say manual, not Manuel. So when you see the poll, that's a stupid typo right there. It says, "Can you drive Manuel?" But it's supposed to be manual.
Yeah, I can, dude. Mr. Faulty from Faulty Towers can drive Manuel. That's it. He can.
Well, whoops, stupid autocorrect. Damn. But anyways,
dude, look, Enigma said Manuel. It said, look, everyone's going Manuel. Oh, but everyone can drive Manuel. Oh my god.
Oh dear, that's a good one, man. That's a typo for the books. I saw it like right as I was about to read that super chat. I was like, did I write Manuel or Manual? I was like, how did it come out with an E instead of an A? But anyways, moving on from that mishap. We have a super chat from Charge, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for your support as well. And it said Talon TA-1 is first flight today, and a new space-based threat monitor is being deployed? ?
And that is an interesting question, Shargy. Let me go see if I can type in this Talon TA-1. And let's see if we can get a look at this thing. A look at the Strato launch. Is this a Virgin Galactic thing? Is it?
I can't see.
I'm trying to find an actual picture of the thing. Well, here we have it. Here it is. That is actually Strato launch. So Strato launch is doing. Let's go to their Twitter. They have a Twitter. So let me go type in their Twitter here. Strato launch. Let's go see what we can get. So here we go. On Twitter.
Peter, the Twitter's here.
Here's them launching the Strato launch, or launching the Talon off of the Strato launch. So, let's check it out. They drop the thing, and there it goes. And,
good Lord, that thing is googly moogly.
Good googly moogly, that thing is diving. Good googly moody, that motor is burning. But there it goes.
And this is Virgin Galactic?
I don't know. I think it's another company called Strato Launch. Although that launch vehicle looked a lot like a Virgin Galactic launch vehicle. But there was the clip. But let's go here. So is that what they renamed Virgin Galactic?
Well, it's actually a different one, it looks like.
Yeah,
it's like they copied the same like aircraft design for the little like ship and the plane.
Yeah. Weird. I never heard about this company before, actually, Sharky. So I don't really know if I would have a lot to comment on it, from knowledge. Now, I can comment on it from a first glance. And to comment on it from a first glance, it may be a new kind of monitor being deployed, but I have a feeling that this is in such a primitive form technologically that it probably wouldn't be. And also, it looks like it's hypersonic flight testing from what I'm seeing here, according to Strato Launch itself. So I would assume, out of all of that, it's probably not going to be monitoring anything. It may be a new kind of weapons delivery platform that they're trying to develop, because hypersonic doesn't have a application in the commercial world. It mostly would have an application in the military world, or the martial world for that matter. And so I would have to say it probably will not have any kind of monitoring aspect to it. It mostly will just be a weapon, or it will be weaponized in the future. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, Sharky, with the limited amount of info I have, because I've never actually heard about this particular weapon system. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for also throwing in your 10th super chat to the channel ever. That is truly amazing. And it makes it possible for us to drive Manuel. And so with that, thank you so much. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and to get that poll up out of here, to get this away, it says, can you drive manual or Manuel? 85% said yes, and 15% said no. So basically everyone here can drive Manuel. But it's, I'd have to say that I wish I could drive manual, like seriously speaking. Like, I really do want to learn that one day. I guess I'd have to trade in my good old car to try to find a manual. And if I couldn't drive, I'm going to blow the clutch out and have to go have it fixed. So I don't know if a daily driver manual is going to work for my first car, or that's a manual. But Enforcer, what about you? You want to drive Manuel?
I don't want to drive Manuel. I believe Manuel should be taking a carefree life. I'm not gonna lie. I'd rather just do automatic. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again, everyone, for commenting on that and letting us know that y'all can drive Manuel. Because we always love to know that we have a bunch of slave drivers in the chat. But with that, it's all jokes aside. With that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Tom J. Andrews, who puts in a 20 Australian donation, by the way. And thank you very much for that support. He says, "Hi guys, and while I may disagree with some of your opinions, your unending support for Ukraine is without equal, and keep up the great work." And also, Tom, no hard feelings. I didn't have any hard feelings earlier when you were talking about it. I do disagree with you. I must admit I do, but we can agree to disagree, like you said in your super chat. And at the end of the day, it's just our opinions. So neither one of us are going to change the situation, but we can at least say how we feel. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you for the support, Tom J. Andrews, and no hard feelings at all. Because if y'all are wondering, the reason why I brought up kind of like an extra talk about the death penalty is because Tom J. Andrews took a difference to what I was saying about how war criminals should be treated. And I would have to say, Tom J. Andrews, I don't disagree with you completely, but I don't agree with you either. I'm kind of in the middle ground there because I can see some very good arguments on both sides in support or opposition of it. It's not one thing I think there's a very clear answer to. I think it's a very ambiguous gray area on kind of like an umbrella theme of whether that should be allowed or not. But on that one particular instance, though, I think that there can be an exception. I could find a way to make an exception because it's not like other things. Like for example, say murder or normal kinds of crimes here in America, where maybe for some reason an attorney didn't do their job well, or maybe there was some very shady things done as far as evidence goes, and someone was wrongfully convicted. With war criminals, it's a lot less gray able, and more so it's a known fact that this guy did criminal things. Because war is all about killing. So to be able to even be able to commit a war crime, you had to have done something truly heinous beyond belief. And so that's why, while I'm largely in the gray area about it, and largely the ebb and flow of society will decide whether that's a thing or not in the civilian and domestic world. In the military world, I could see it actually still being applied, at least in my opinion. But still, I thank you so much for enjoying the channel, Tom, and I thank you for finding an ability to disagree, because it wasn't a pointed, rude way to disagree. It was just kind of called as barbarian Americans, which, I mean, every once in a while it may be true, But beyond that, I do thank you so much for enjoying the channel and finding it worthwhile to support, although maybe every once in a while we may end up disagreeing on a thing here or there. It is just a conversation after all, and whether we agree or disagree with each other, it won't change the law. That will take millions of people, and that's something that this channel is not influencing right now, at least on that kind of a level, to make it that serious of a statement or an issue on really either of our sides, fortunately. So we just get to talk about it idly and have no pressure on us whatsoever. But still, thank you so much for enjoying this channel and wanting us to keep up the great work. We are more than happy to. We are always happy to get on here each and every night and run this show and let y'all know what news is going on around the world. I couldn't think of it any other way. I wouldn't have it any other way. And so, thank you so much once again, Tom J. Andrews, and thank you also for being one of the folks who disagreed, and it's fine to disagree with us at any given moment, but also kept it very polite, because that's the kind of disagreements that we would like to see on this channel. We don't want to be cussed out violently by people. We just want folks to be like you and just say that you disagree with it. That was a very good way that you put it, and I got to thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I did know what driving a stick shift meant, but I didn't know what the person meant in the chat. By the way, I see everybody going ham about that. Like, you didn't know what it meant to drive a stick shift. It's like, no, I knew what driving stick meant, but I didn't know what that fella was getting at. And he never responded, by the way. So I'm not sure if he was like trying to take a jab or what. But anyways, moving on to our next one, we have a $20 super chat from Hans Eriksson, and thank you very much, Hans, for that support. He says, "Oh, at last I'm awake to watch Enforcer live from Sweden." And hey!
and hello to Sweden, a beautiful country, and hello to Hans Eriksson. And it's great to hear that you're able to watch all the way from Sweden. Welcome to NATO. Hope you're having fun here. Also, really cool to know that you're watching. You had to have started watching probably at like 3 or 4 in the morning. Really cool to think that you were. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And it's great to know that you're here with us tonight. That is so cool. I wonder where you're from in Sweden, because there's not really that many places I think you can be from. Almost everyone in Sweden lives here in the southern part of the country, and almost no one lives up here in the northern area. You know what, Maddie? I'm actually kind of curious. What does it look like up here? There's no roads up here.
What part is this now?
This is just like in the middle of northern Sweden.
Well, dang, man, that mountain right there, a little hill, has been like wrecked with something.
It looks like it has.
Or is that normal?
I think that thing might be wrecked because there's like no grass on it. I guess this is what it would normally look like the lichens and kind of like the sporadic grass or kind of like the thinly growing grass. I think that's what it normally look like. Pretty arid. It's almost tundra-like up here in this area.
Yeah, it looks pretty good though. I like the trees. It reminds me of that nice Nordic look.
Yeah, I really love, dude, I love the trees in Northern Europe. I mean, the trees up there are beautiful. And I think some of the oldest trees in Sweden are like hundreds of years old. I think some of them get up to like 600 years old. But they don't actually disclose where those trees are, because if they do, they become tourist attractions. And they found out back in the past that usually tourists bring idiocy, and idiocy brings destruction, and usually the trees end up getting burned to the ground and lost. So I think some of the trees are very, very old. But let's go to this town here of Boden. This is like a tiny town in the middle of nowhere, you know, relative for Sweden. So let's see what a tiny town in the middle of nowhere in Sweden looks like. And it looks way too good. This pisses me off. The middle of nowhere, dude.
Nowhere?
Yeah, this is, I'll show you where this is. There's Boden. So keep that in mind as I zoom out and keep the mouse cursor on it. The literal middle of nowhere in Sweden.
It's, you know, the Europeans have it too good because they don't have so much land they have to maintain, and they can put a lot more quality into their spaces. Like the U.S. has good cities and stuff like here and there, but overall though they don't look as nice as this.
I think it's not really about all the land. I think it's more about population density, because, you know, Europe is really dense population-wise per mile, and so they have such a high population density that they actually have an ability to take care of a lot of their stuff. But it's wild to look at, and also I think it has to do a lot with population density too, because in Europe, unlike America, where things are really spread out and you have to take care of a lot more land per person in a city, in European cities, the population density is a lot more tight. They're in a much smaller area, and so you get to maintain that smaller area with the same amount of people in it, and it costs less, and so you're able to make the whole place look nice. Because this is just, it's really clean. It's way cleaner than you would think it would be, because here in America, this wouldn't look as good at all. Like even in the best case scenario, it wouldn't look this nice. And
although I do say that it looks nice, but I will say, like, getting back here, I realized something, that doesn't Sweden have one of the like highest like depression rates in the world or something like that? It's one of those countries up there that has a very high rate of depression.
Highest depression rates by country. I don't think it's Scandinavian countries, but let's see what we have. Let's see. So the United States has a depression rate of 5.9%. One of the highest in the world, as a matter of fact.
That's it?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty high, you know, like to actually have people.
I thought it was low.
No, that's actually pretty high, because the next highest country, the highest country in the world, is Ukraine, with a depression rate of 6.3%. That is the highest in the world.
Well, I mean, they might have a reason to be upset, for real though.
Let's see. Let me see if anyone beats them. No one beats them. No, the Ukrainians are up there. The highest depression rate in the world, sadly. But the Swedes have a depression rate of 4.9%, which is a whole percentage point below the United States. And when you're dealing with the highest being 6.3%, that's a very big difference in between the depression rates in Sweden versus America. But in Finland it's 5.6, and in Norway it's 4.7. The UK actually.
Well, at least that's just a reported number, at least, because I have a hard time believing only 5% of Americans are actually depressed, because I see a lot of depressed people walking around every day for it only to be 5%. That must just be the reported number.
Yeah, and also, I kind of find it odd that apparently Afghanistan has a 3.3% depression rate. I have a feeling
Oh,
there's a
hell
lot to
no.
be sad about in Afghanistan right now. So I have a feeling that those numbers might be a little bit, rigged maybe, but still a little interesting. But beyond that, still an amazing, beautiful country you live in, Hans Eriksson, just looking in the middle of nowhere. And thank you so much once again for the support and being here with us live on the channel and taking the time to get up so early in the morning to do that. It means a lot. And thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to none other than BC Skyman. He puts in a $20 donation and does not leave a comment. But BC, in your honor, I just stugned a bot from the live chat. I hope you're happy about that. And thank you very much for that support, as always, and helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much once again, BC Skyman, for throwing in the Robot Rhino and putting in OP. Because this channel is overpowered thanks to all of y'all. We are able to do unbelievable, incredible things. And if it wasn't for the Lee Spring Army, we wouldn't be able to make that happen. We wouldn't be able to make that possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Siri, who puts in the 20. And thank you very much as well, Siri. They said, thank you for your important work, Enforcer Brothers. And thank you as well. They said, in terms of Ukraine, you have reported facts, provided context, and kept morale high. And unrelated, I propose an LSA calendar, LOL. And XO from Oslo. Hey, Oslo, let's go.
And thank you so much for the support. And Matthew, a calendar would be pretty cool because we could actually so to give you all a little bit of context and background, I'm wanting to commission artists to make cool paintings and stuff and illustrations of the LSA flag and cool little scenarios, like on the battlefield, stuff like that. We wanted to do that, but I haven't really come up with a good way to actually make that possible and find a way to fit that in the merch. But doing a calendar would be pretty cool because we could have 12 different artworks commissioned, Matthew, and have one for each month. That would actually
would be pretty neat. Like, with each day, like having a different artwork in the day box or something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
More so for the month, because when you put those calendars up, you flip up the month, and the top backside of each month is blank, but then the next page has the next month on it, so you can put an illustration on the back of those blank pages.
Oh. Okay, I got you now, because I'll be honest with you, I've never used a paper calendar. I've seen them in a store, like just glanced at it. But yeah, I could maybe make that happen. Does anybody really use the like calendars like that anymore? I mean, it'd be cool. Don't get me wrong, but do people really use those in mass?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Do most of y'all still use paper calendars, or do y'all kind of use calendars on your phone or your computer? Because I mean, if we could make that happen, and a lot of y'all will actually use those calendars and would want one, that would be pretty cool to do, because that would give me a way to actually have those artworks made. And then not only could we put them onto the calendars, we could make them like buyable digital wallpaper packs and stuff like that. And we would actually have a good reason to commission those artworks. But beyond that, I do like that idea. That is a pretty cool idea at the moment. And oh, look, we're getting a lot of people here.
Oh yeah, a lot of people have them.
Actually, a lot of people use them. So hell, we might actually make that happen. So, hell, that actually seems like that might be a really good idea, Siri, and thank you for sharing that. That is cool. And let's see here. Hello to Oslo, another viewer from a Scandinavian country in Norway. Really cool. We've dropped down in Oslo so many times. So I won't do it again, but still really cool to know that you are our LSA viewer from Oslo, the capital of Norway. And not only that, thank you so much for enjoying our work, and thank you for finding it to be factual, contextual, and not only that, a morale booster. I love to know that people like you, Siri, and not just people like you, Siri, but you yourself, Siri, enjoy this channel, because it means so much to us that people actually find this channel to be a fun thing to watch. The wars are unfun. Like, big shocker to everyone, but wars are terrible. Wars are very unfun, and if you don't sit there and try and make yourself have high morale during a war and keep your spirits up, and people don't try to keep their spirits up, it's very easy to slip into depression and then just, think the war is completely for naught and for no reason at all. And that is something that I always try and make sure that we stave away from the channel, because so many people out there love to do that, because there are so many people who are virtue signalers that try and act like they can't try and keep spirits up in a war. They can actually try and support a war effort, because then they're not virtuous. They can't be virtuous doing that, so they have to cry through the whole thing. And that's why, you know, we want to make sure to keep spirits as high as possible. As Avdiivka and Mandy get into a yelling match in the chat because Avdiivka said, "Would that be a Manuel calendar?" And Mandy's like, "Get the hell out of here!" I saw that. I was like, "Ooh!" And then you respond. I was like, "Ooh!" But I'm getting a kick out of it. And Avdiivka, that was a good one. But beyond that, thank you so much for enjoying those aspects about the channel series. It means so much to us, and it's amazing to know that you're our LSA viewer from Oslo. Our LSA soldier, more so, from Oslo, Norway. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and thank you. Thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And also, I saw a good idea by Nige, who put in the live chat. It said, ask your followers to email you the best LSA art with the caveat it could be used by the channel, and I guarantee you there's some good artists on here. And that is a good idea as well. We could use that for the calendar, but one thing I was also thinking is we use these custom poly mailers to ship out our flags, or we will be using them when we ship them out. And I've created some artwork for the outside of it, but it's interchangeable. We'll have to reorder those every time we do a new merch drop. So an idea I was having for the Enforcer, and proposed it a few days ago, was that we commission a competition in the LSA for the best artwork, and we take the top 5 and let people vote on it, and then that gets featured on next month's packaging on the poly mailer. So each order that gets sent out, it'll have that viewer's artwork on it with their name. It'll say submitted by so-and-so of the LSA. That would be a super cool idea for me, and also it would take a load off trying to design like new packaging every month as well, because that's a big load for me in addition to everything else to manage with the merch stores. So, Enforcer, what do you think about that idea?
I think it would be a really cool idea, and when I'm thinking about artwork, to let you all know like what's in my head, like it would be really cool to do stuff with the LSA flag in the background, because that's not just a limited edition flag. That's now the flag forever and ever and ever. It's just that the limited edition ones are going to be signed by us, and for a while the LSA flag will probably not be on the store after the limited edition is done, but it will return. It's just that none of them will be signed from that point on. It will just be the first drop we ever do with the flag where we hand sign them. But when I'm talking about like pictures and illustrations and stuff, I'm thinking of really cool ones like this one. Like these kind of like patriotic posters, but instead of it being like a British flag or something, it's the flag of the LSA back there, and we switch out the soldier to look like a modern soldier or something along those lines, wearing modern gear. Or we could do something like this, or, you know, it's like the LSA flag, everything's modernized, you know, stuff like that. Like, I think that'd be really cool to have artwork like this on our stuff. Because the channel, you know, it does have the Enforcer guy. It's a World War I kind of a themed channel just by the logo itself. So it would be really cool to have some stuff kind of revolve around that a little bit, and have our artwork look like that kind of stuff. Or we can make it modernized looking, but still kind of in a similar vein as these kinds of posters. That's the kind of idea that I'm thinking about. Or, you know, you could just take it and run with it. Because honestly, I never thought that a design like Torosor made would be the LSA flag design, because it's not my style, but it ended up looking so good that it became my style. It became the LSA style because it was just that good. So, you know, really any kind of artwork would be cool. But, you know, this is the kind of stuff that I have in my head, you know, where it'd be like, oh, it'd be really cool to have like actual posters, because we could put these on shirts. We could make these actual posters to throw in as little extra goodies with merch drops and stuff like that, you know, because these would be easy to make. You just print them up, you throw them in with something else. They're, you know, hopefully relatively inexpensive, so we can easily throw that in, you know, without going into the red or anything doing that. And also we can make that like digital wallpapers, all kinds of cool stuff. We could do endless amounts of stuff with these things. But still, I think that would be a pretty cool idea, at least in my opinion. But, you know, you never know. You never know. And also, actually, a lot of people have watched Faulty Towers, Matthew. 42%.
That's a good bit. Actually, 58% said no. Like, what? 58% of y'all are missing out. It's a great show. I thought it was really funny. And actually, I watched it the first time because the Enforcer had gotten a subscription to BritBox on whatever platform that's on. I think it was BBC. And I just happened to catch an episode, and I thought at first, I'm like, this show's stupid. Like, what is this? And then I watched another one. I was like, wait a minute, this is actually pretty good. And then I watched like the whole series. And I was like, damn, they didn't make any more of these? Like, this is it? It's really a good show. Like I liked it. Very odd, like kind of dry comedy. I think John Cleese was the main guy in that show, but I loved it. The whole Manuel thing was funny. Like I liked it. It was just literally a show about a guy in a hotel, kind of like a Seinfeld type show, to be honest. But Enforcer, what do you think about Fawlty Towers? Did you like that joint?
Dude, one of the funniest episodes was when Sybil got sick, remember, and her family, well, she didn't want to see her family or something, or whatever, and they were coming by, and so the maid or whatever she was, the assistant, got in the bed and pretended to be Sybil, and they like dolled her up and everything.
Oh,
And the family
yeah.
said, "Oh, you're looking a little peckish," and one of them tried to put up her hand, and she bit it, and they went, "Oh," and all that stuff. That was like was one of the funniest episodes, because then John Cleese came in and like hit her and stuff. It was like just completely absurd stuff. It was wild, but it was a funny show through and through. It was hilarious. I would say that if it wasn't for it being so short, I think it would be funnier than Seinfeld if they had like 8 seasons of that stuff. But they only made 2 seasons of it, and then they quit because, according to Cleese, they just ran out of ideas. And that's so sad, man, because they were such good ideas. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that poll well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Wyatt, very much. He says, I apologize, sir, for the drop last night. And he says, I was behind in the stream. It was Bud Walton Arena. And when the U of A is in session and the college team, the Razorbacks, play there, it's the Razorback Stadium. And my bad.
Oh, that's A-okay, Wyatt. That's A-okay. I think we still found it. I think, if I remember correctly. But still, it's A-okay, Wyatt. We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes, and it's perfectly fine, because it wasn't that big of a mistake. We did find the stadium. It's just that it took a little extra minute. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for making this channel possible, Wyatt. And thank you for sharing with us a little bit of where you're from. Because it was pretty cool to look at, and it was actually a pretty nice place. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that quite well, fairly well for that matter. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Matt Cheer as well as Ari Soini, Kiwi Wife and Finn. And thank you very much, Ari and Matt, for that $10 support. And we appreciate it very much because, as y'all know, as we say all the time, it helps us to keep running. And we truly do appreciate it because it is nice to keep running, I must admit. But seriously, though, thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're moving on to our next one, which goes to Jay Bagwell, a channel legend as well, who puts in a $10 donation. It's good to see you once again, Jay. He says, if you look closely at the Makarov picture, it appears to be jammed, and the slide is not back far enough to be locked back. And if you compared one that is locked open, you'll see the difference.
You know, Jay, you probably got a point there, because it does look like it's not locked all the way back. I hate to say this, because I do actually have a Makarov. I wish I had it with me right now. It's not with me. I'd have to go and grab it, and that would take minutes. And sadly, I can't do that on the show. Because I would test that out here in the room, of course, with no ammo, and just see if that is the case here on air. But sadly, I don't have the pistol with me. But I think you might be right. That looks like it might not be locked all the way back. Let's see. And let's see. Let's go look at a Makarov. Makarov, locked open, or locked up, apparently is what they say here in the pictures. So let's see if I can find one. You know what, Jay? You are absolutely dead on the nail. You are right. Because this one here... Wait a minute. Wait, hang on. It looks like he's trying to take the slide off. So I don't know. Well, let me look around. Let me see if we can find one locked back. Oh, dang. That one with the silencer is cool, but that's not what we're looking for. Okay, so... You are right, Jay, because let's look at the slide here. The slide here lines up directly with the front of the bottom of the pistol. I don't want to call that the lower, because I don't know the exact terminology. Sorry about that. But if we look at this one here, which is locked back, you can see that it is just a hair back further, and more of the barrel is visible. In this little video here, that's not the case. So it looks like that this Makarov may be jammed, actually. So you may be right, Jay. You may be, well, actually, you're not, it's not you may be right, you are right. This thing is actually, apparently jammed or something, because it's not locked all the way back. And that is something, Jay, that I was not able to notice. Jay is here, figuring stuff out. pretty impressive. I gotta say, Jay, that's actually a very impressive catch right there. That is that kind of ultra gun expert kind of a catch that you really have to know, because it is literally, I think, just a half inch further back to be fully locked back like this, and you call it the difference. Impressive work, and maybe still staged, but I think that's less so now that you pointed that out. But still, thank you so much, Jay Bagwell, for being an amazing friend, and not only that, an amazing viewer and soldier of the Lee Spring Army, and old guard by the definition, through and through, even by the original definition of old guard, and a great catch on Jay Bagwell's end. Everyone, give a huge thank you to Jay Bagwell for being the true Makarov expert, and letting us know that that is not locked back, that is actually jammed, probably on a cartridge that is inside of the pistol. But still,
he is the expert. You know, if he says something about firearms, you know he's right every time.
Oh, you can take it to the bank. If Jay says something about firearms, you can take it straight to the bank. So everyone give Jay Bagwell a huge catch. Tell him it's an impressive catch, huge one, because that takes pretty much the eye of a jewelry expert in the gun world to be able to see that, because I did not see that. Very impressive stuff. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Truth Trooper, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much as well. They said that this channel has gotten me through great times and also some occasional tougher times. And I love being around like-minded people who support Ukraine in their fight against tyranny. And I'm glad to hear it as well. And also thank you very much for the support and for being around for a very long time as well. And I'm also glad to hear that we've helped you through the occasional tougher times as well. We don't put all of our business out there because we don't want to burden y'all with it. But we do have some tougher times ourselves, so we do relate. And we're glad to hear that we've helped get you through it a little bit. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you so much, Truth Trooper, for being here and enjoying the channel. And thank you so much for saying that we get you through some rough times and some good times. Crazily enough, we've heard that a lot from many different people. I never thought that we would impact people that way running this channel, where people actually get help through, get some solace through our show on bad days. Never in my life did I think that, because back in the day, you know, I was like, I'll tell you something. This is something I always think about when people say this. Back in the day when Matthew and me were growing up, we were actually kind of big Trekkies. We were into Star Trek a good bit, especially The Next Generation. And that, of course, leads you eventually down the documentaries that are made after the show is over, from all of the cast and stuff that talk about what they did. And one thing that sticks out to me, Matthew, I don't even know if you remember this exact documentary, but we watched it together. It was when Jonathan Frakes, who was Commander Riker in The Next Generation, was talking about going to the Star Trek cons or whatever they're called. And someone came up to him and said, you know, I had a rough time growing up, and I always used to take solace and comfort in watching the show every time it came out, that it had a big impact on me. He never thought he would affect people that way. That is always, for some reason, that little thing from that documentary is always what I think about when people say stuff like that, Truth Trooper. I'm always like, that's crazy that somehow, you know, because I remember watching it, I was like, that's crazy that people actually, you know, would be helped out through tough times through a show because they just really like it. I always thought that was really cool and really something. And it's really crazy to think that that's kind of come full circle, and now I'm getting to do that for folks like you, Truth Trooper. And that means a lot to us. That really is very heartwarming to hear, that people are helped out through tough times because of this show. I never imagined that we'd do that. I knew that we would probably, you know, once we got monetized and we were able to run fundraiser stuff, I knew that we would help out in Ukraine. But I never knew I'd be able to actually help out people who watch the channel itself just by running the show. And that giving people something to look forward to each day. I never believed that that would be the case. And I gotta thank you so much, Truth Trooper, for letting us help you out through rough times. And I hope you've been able to find a lot of solace and enjoyment in this channel. Because it was never intended for that, but I'm more than happy for that to be a side effect of this channel. And so thank you so much once again. And of course, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Junebug72, who puts in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, Junebug. And also, glad to see the super chat started working, because along with several other people, they're saying they're having problems putting in the super chats pretty much every night for at least a week now. And one solution I found, if y'all are ever having a problem with that, is try clearing out the cookies in your browser. And that appears to be a temporary fix, but I'm not sure what's causing the issue. Only YouTube would know that, and hopefully they're on it. It seems to take them a minute to get on these problems, but they do solve them eventually. But thank you very much for persevering. And Junebug says, Matt, good evening, and your stream is going so well. And may Ukraine get the peace what they need already so they can help end this devastating war, and that they deserve to and try to heal, repair, and to live.
And I'd agree with that completely. Amen! And thank you so much once again for the support. And hopefully Ukraine will be able to fight its way into having the peace that it's been fighting for this entire time. This invasion was something that they never wanted, but it's something they got. And they're trying to fight and win as quick as possible. And hopefully the West will continue to support at full speed like we did in the first year and help them to actually bring an end to this war. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, Junebug. And thank you also for being an old guard and longtime legend of the channel. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to John Dunn, who puts in a 10 and says, LSA.
And LSA! And thank you so much, John Dunn, for the support. And I like your profile picture. Very mysterious, Matthew, because it's just a person, like a person that is completely darkened on a white background. It's like an unlocked character in a video game.
Man, it's scary, man. It's scary.
Scary. He's our CIA payroll guy. But beyond that, thank you so much for giving us support, John Dunn, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. And the Leaf Spring will never die thanks to people like you. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have goes to Badger Bro, the bro of the Badzes. He puts in a 10, and thank you very much. He says, Enforcer, is there a danger of Russia capturing the Bradley intact? And has Ukraine lost a HIMARS or Patriot battery?
All right, so thank you for the support, Badger Bro. And there's no danger in the Russians capturing the Bradley. They're advanced, yes, but there isn't such a thing as the Russians reverse engineering them. Because even if they did, well, you know, tough luck for them. Most of the technology that's inside of the Bradley is impossible for them to really get in large numbers to mass produce a vehicle like the Bradley. That's why they don't have anything in service like that right now, or even pre-war. But to answer your question, Ukraine has lost a HIMARS. They lost one about 5 days ago. It was the first one ever lost over 2 years. And also, we didn't cover this tonight, but yes, the Ukrainians did lose a Patriot battery. Almost half of it. It was caught on the middle of a road. I don't know what happened, but apparently they had regrouped the battery. We believe it's actually the Wandering battery that's been wreaking havoc against the Russians for weeks at this point. But it looks like half of the battery, except for one vital component, it was a decent amount of the launchers, I believe, all ended up pulled alongside one road, and they got obliterated. I believe they got hit by a Smerch, and the Smerch rocket landed pretty much on top of one of the launchers. It detonated. That detonation created a secondary explosion on the other launcher and wiped it out. And there was also a couple of support vehicles around that also got destroyed as well. From what we could tell, however, it was a very lucky hit because the radar station and also the generator vehicle that is a part of a Patriot battery weren't there during that strike. So technically, that Patriot battery is not knocked out because as long as they have the generator unit and the radar system, the battery is still operational. It's just that it's down about half of its launchers. That's very unfortunate, though, because each of those systems cost approximately $1 billion to field each. So about $250 to $300 million of Patriot battery got destroyed in that one hit. So I can confirm that. We did see that. I did not show it tonight. But still, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that as best as possible. And once again, a lot like the HIMARS, I'm really shocked that the attrition of the Patriot batteries has been so low for so long. But once again, as every once in a while, the Ukrainians do end up getting a little unlucky, and that was one of these days. Today was one of those days where they did get a little unlucky and ended up losing part of a Patriot battery. And so with that, I hope that does address that. Thank you once again for the support, Badger Bro, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who throws in a $5 super chat and says, take a live chat question. And we shall, CK Bold. And thank you very much, as always, for that very consistent support. And the live chat question is going to go to Avdiivka Plan, who says, there are reports on other outlets that Ukraine lost a Patriot system. And do you know anything about that?
And yes, I actually just talked about that thanks to Badger Bro. They lost about half of the battery. I want to make sure that that's clear because a lot of people think the Patriot is like this individual thing. The Patriot SAM. Let me go see if I can pull that up. The MIM 104. Here we go. So let me see if I can show y'all what a lot of people think a Patriot is. here we go. This is what a lot of people think the Patriot is. It's just this one vehicle with this one launcher, and that's the whole system. There are actually multiple vehicles that are a part of a Patriot battery. Now, there's an actual launcher right there. But there is a generator vehicle right here. This is the electric power plant vehicle for the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Forces Patriot battery. This is a vital vehicle. There's only one of them per battery, so if this thing gets knocked out, the battery's screwed. There's another vehicle. Well, actually, there are two other vehicles that there's only one of. There's the mass group vehicle. This is another one from Japan, but there's only one vehicle of its kind in the entire battery. If this vehicle gets hit and knocked out, the battery is screwed. There is also a radar vehicle. Well, actually, there's different variants of the radar. These are, once again, the Japanese variants of the radar system. But if this radar got hit and knocked out, that Patriot battery is screwed. This is actually a German Patriot radar battery system. This one's actually mounted onto a MAN Cat, which is the truck name. It's a MAN is the company, Cat is the name of the truck. I don't want you to think I'm calling it a MAN Cat, because that's not what it is. It is a MAN Cat. But beyond that, that's the radar system. If the radar system had been hit, if the generator had been hit, or if the antenna vehicle had been hit, the battery is pretty much down until they get a replacement. From what we could tell, it was only 2 of the launcher vehicles that got hit. There are several launchers in every battery. I believe there's maybe 4 or 5 of them. So now that Patriot battery is down an entire 35-40% of their battery power. They still have 3 other launchers left, and they do have the generator, the radar, and the antenna mast vehicles. So the battery should technically still be operational. It's just that they're going to be possessing less firepower at any given moment. Not that they need it, because you really, honestly, in most instances, they're probably only using 1 of the 5 launchers at any given moment, but still, it's not great to be down 2 launchers, and they're also very costly. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can as far as that live chat goes, and gives a little bit more detail about why the whole Patriot battery isn't down, because yes, the Patriot battery did get hit, but it's not completely destroyed or knocked out or disabled. It's still operational, just down a few launchers. And so with that, thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat question, CK Bold. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to none other than Hal Rose, the channel legend, who throws in a $33 donation and says, Enforcer Matt, quote of the day, you can deny reality if you want, but you cannot deny the consequences of denying that reality, said Ayn Rand. And Ukraine deals with reality every day. And they sure do. And thank you very much for the support.
And they sure do, Hal Rose, and I thank you for providing that quote. Man, that's like one of those loading screen quotes, you know, when like you're loading into something and they have a quote up. You can deny reality if you want, but you cannot deny the consequences of denying that reality. Ayn Rand. And
what kind of loading screen are you looking at?
Man, like, you know, the old Call of Duty loading screens?
I guess so. Like I don't really recall. It's gone out of my memories.
Like
I don't remember that far back.
What? What? How do you know?
Yeah.
What the hell? But anyways, with that, I do thank you for the support, Hal Rose, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you helped make it possible. And yes, I would agree. Ukraine is living in reality every day. And fortunately, here on this channel, we all live in reality here too. And I thank you so much for being a part of that reality, Hal Rose, and helping this reality to continue to survive. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Nick, still thinking, LSA, who puts in a 5. And says, keep up the great work, fellas, and take one from the live chat, and long live the LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. And thank you so much once again, Nick Still Thinking and Carrie Ann Corzo, for both being here tonight. Thank you for still enjoying it, and thank you for sponsoring a live chat. So what do we got for a live chat, Matthew?
And this live chat question goes to, let's see here, Halbschatten. Who's German, I guess. They said Russian law claims half of Ukraine is Russia, and would they use nukes then?
Probably not, because technically they annexed the entirety of the Kherson Oblast, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. Not just the areas that are under Russian control at the moment, but the entirety of the oblast, including the parts that they don't control. And whenever the Ukrainians have made advances or gains in those areas, we've never seen the Russians threaten or use nuclear weapons, because at this point, officially in the Russian mind, the Ukrainians are encroaching on Russian territory on an official level. And we haven't seen them use nukes then, so I'd highly doubt that they'd use them in that scenario as well, based off of that precedent. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again, Nick Still. Thank you for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Blue Flam 777, 007. Yeah, 007. LSA, who puts in the 5 and says, I don't know why that messed me up so bad. I got hung up on that. I was like, what? Whoa, Jack, whoa, get your mind together.
Maybe vote for me for
on,
Congress. Jack. Whoa, Jack, 9mm, blow out the law. Whoa, Jack, whoa. It was the greatest. Anyways, let's get on to the live chat. I mean, let's go to the super chat.
Yeah, Blue Flame says, I blame my parents for my soap addiction. I had a dirty mouth. Slava Ukraine, question to the chat. Whoa, Jack, get that soap out of your mouth. Don't eat that soap. Whoa.
When I was a boy.
He put soap in his mouth. It was bad for him. Bigly soap. Bigly disaster. It was a wreck.
When I was a boy, my boy Bo would go around and eat soap. I ate a lot of soap. And when I went to the grocery store, I tried to buy some noodles. But beyond that, I
remember when the soap used to touch my legs. My hairy legs.
No. I gotta tell you, they were the most hairy legs. Couldn't get hairier. Everyone would come up and they'd say, those legs are the hairiest. I've never seen hairier. But beyond that, because we have to make it fair. But beyond that, I gotta say, Blue Flame 777. That is a pun. That's a pun and a half right there. But beyond that, Slava Ukraini. And we will make sure to send a question to the chat.
And the question to the chat goes to Vito Capone. Don't kill us, please. They said, Matt, do you think those will lead to a tactical nuke war between NATO and Russia? Or will it lead to a conventional war between NATO and Russia? Because the way I see it, it's looking bad.
It's looking kind of bad. It's kind of looking heated. But I would say it will, like, the way escalation works is that nuclear weapons are not thrown as soon as the war begins. A conventional war will happen. That will always happen. But once it starts to go one-sided, where one side is dominating the other, that's when the nuclear weapons get pulled out. And as soon as one side uses nuclear weapons, the other one will start to use them at the exact same time. So the best way I can explain this, let's talk about this in a Cold War instance. War breaks out in West Germany, and the United States, well, actually, NATO stops the Russians from advancing through the Fulda Gap, or the Soviets from advancing through the Fulda Gap, and now they start pushing on into East Germany, and then through Poland, and then into the Soviet Union itself. By this point, the Soviet Union is getting beat so badly, and the Warsaw Pact is getting beat so badly, that they are going to start using tactical nuclear weapons on advancing NATO forces. The reason why they're doing that is that tactical nuclear weapons have a high destructive yield for the weapon that it is, and it can wipe out pretty much entire divisions. Well, not really divisions, probably more so a brigade level unit. It can probably wipe out an entire brigade with a single tactical nuke. So the Soviets would be doing that to try and level the playing field, so that way their armed forces can start to fight a much more diminished and weakened NATO armed force that is pushing them back. But then, of course, NATO is not going to allow their military to get wiped out by tactical nuclear strikes on the battlefield, so then NATO is going to start using tactical nuclear weapons on the Soviets and start wiping out their ground forces with tactical nukes. By that point, someone is running out of tactical nukes at this point, and pretty much both armies have been completely decimated on the field from tactical nuclear strikes endlessly occurring. So one side is going to have a complete advantage by the end of that. It's going to be a small armed force that they're advancing with, but they'll still have a complete advantage. And by that point, let's say the Soviets are the ones that are being threatened in our scenario, which they are, then that's when they launch intercontinental ballistic missiles. And then, of course, we respond immediately in turn, probably within 5 minutes, by launching our own, and then nuclear Armageddon is assured. That's pretty much the exact same way it would go down now if there was a full-on conventional war and the Russians got steamrolled. Their response would be the same as the Soviets would be back in the Cold War. To start using tactical nuclear weapons first on ground forces, and then once that didn't even stop a steamrolling, then they'd use the intercontinentals. During that entire time, there would probably be a lot of negotiations going on in the background, because everyone would understand they're probably on an irreversible course to nuclear annihilation if they didn't try and find some kind of an end to this conflict. So that, I hope, explains it as best as possible, because it is pretty grim. But tactical nuclear weapons still would not be used immediately. It would actually take a while, even if a full-on conventional war broke out in between NATO and Russia, for a tactical weapon to be first used. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Carl, who puts in a $5 donation and does not leave a comment. But as always, thank you very much, Carl, as well, for that very consistent support, and we appreciate it very much. And then we have a 5 from Jason Carpenter, who says, hey guys, I just wanted to kick in and show my appreciation, and thanks for the news, and you're killing it, bro.
You're killing it, Jerry, killing it. But thank you so much for the support, Jason Carpenter, and helping this channel to keep on running. I'm glad to know that you wanted to kick in and show appreciation. We thank you so much for showing your appreciation, Jason, because you're an old guard, and old guards do be old garden. And thank you so much for enjoying the news and finding this channel to be enjoyable. And so, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Octavian Timurosanu. And I'm sorry about that last name butchering right there, because I know that's not the way you say it. But thank you very much, Octavian, for the $5 super chat. He says, for Ukraine, and for the Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. And he says, for the LSA, and if you play Helldivers 2, for democracy.
And thank you so much for the support, Octavian Timisoarano, I believe is how it's pronounced.
I think that's better pronounced than I did it.
If I said that correctly, I just won the jackpot right there, man, because I literally did that off the cuff. If that was correct, let us know, Octavian. But still, thank you so much for enjoying the channel. Long live the LSA, and I do play Helldivers 2, so I will defend managed democracy and liberty across the galaxy, but I like to be a little low-key about it, because there are so many people, like, it is an amazing game, truly probably one of the greatest that has come out this year and probably over the past few years, but there are so many people who are running that game into the ground right now by talking about it. They're burning out a lot of my enjoyment of it, because everywhere you go, there's Ukraine war people who are like, oh, I'm going to play Helldivers 2. It's like, great, but there's a war going on, maybe not like televised, you're just going to go kid around and have fun, you know, on Helldivers, but still, I do play Helldivers 2, and I gotta admit, it is a really, really fun game. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Octavian, for the support. And I actually said it correct, Matthew. Octavian Timurosanu said I said that correctly.
Hey, that was a good guess, man, because I didn't guess right.
Man, I can't believe I did that either. That was honestly just a luck of the draw right there. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to the Badger Bro yet again, and he puts in another 20. And thank you very much, Badger Bro. He says, Enforcer, the other day you mentioned the swastika, and it was used as a symbol of evil by that right there. He says, but what? Yes, but what about the Black Sun and the Wolf's Angel? Were they also before a symbol of peace, or other militaries adapted them? Question mark.
And let's see. Let's see here. Jawohl. Yeah. Yikes. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out how do we show this. Well, I'll just answer the question. So a lot of the symbols that are used nowadays in the modern form as bad symbols, it used to not have a bad meaning at all. Really, honestly, they just used to exist as symbols. There was nothing evil about them. Because, like here, I'll show you all this. Because this is something actually a little bit interesting, speaking about the Wolf's Angle, which is something that Ukraine has called flack for, and I'm going to have to give y'all a quick little rundown on this, because this is something that, you know, honestly, there might be a okay reason to give flack about. This is the Wolf's Angle, and that's it right there. And a lot of people might actually realize that that is a symbol that we've seen a good bit so far in the war in Ukraine. It is actually the symbol of the Azov unit right there. The thing about that symbol in a modern light, after World War II, is that the Wolf's Angle symbol was actually used by the Nazi army for the 2nd SS Panzer Division. That is what led it to be a fascist symbol in the modern day, a lot like the swastika, and pretty much just verboten across all of Europe. In Europe, and specifically in Germany, there are laws that forbid the use of the swastika, the Wolf's Angle, and a whole bunch of other symbols, because they're considered Nazi symbology. And you can see different kinds of the Wolf's Angle here. That's pretty much just the Z. So now you can pretty much make the argument that the Russians took another Nazi symbol and started to run with it for the armed forces. And then also, there's this Wolf's Angle as well. These are different ones for different SS units, but all of these were used by the SS, not the German here, which would be the German army. But nevertheless, this is where the symbol kind of came from, and that is something that the Azov kind of had a little bit of a rough thing beginning with, because the Azov actually started in 2014. I'm trying to figure out how to tiptoe through this because it's a really interesting, well, it's a really tough thing to actually explain. The Azov unit in 2014, when the Donbass conflict first began, was actually a fascist unit, through and through. The leaders were fascist. It was made of Azov football hooligans, which were particularly known for being Nazi leaning. You know, that's what they were kind of known for. But at the same time, the 2014 Donbass conflict was actually a lot more different than the conflict we see today. That conflict in 2014, when it kicked off, was a battle between full-on communists in the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic, and then a full-on fight in between the opposition to communism, which is fascism on the other extreme, which was on the Ukrainian side. As time went on, the DPR and LPR moved away from pretty much being communist countries and pretty much just moved into being a quasi-Russian territory, and the Azov, once it was brought under Ukrainian command, under the Ukrainian armed forces, the somewhat, I guess you could say extreme nationalism, or, Nazism, if you want to call it, was removed from the unit, but they maintained the symbology. So I hope that explains that the best I can. Honestly, once again, the symbol suffered a great deal of perversion, pretty much, throughout the Second World War, a lot like the swastika did, because both of them were inherently neutral symbols before the war and were actually considered fairly alright symbols to just use whenever. They were positive symbols with no bad connotation. But once World War II came around, and these symbols got completely associated with, the most evil regime in the world, the Nazis, they took on a different form. So, using these in the modern context usually takes on, that they're not necessarily the greatest group. I hope I explain that the best I can, because it is a minefield to talk about the Azov's Azov's unit symbol, because in reality, it may as well be in a similar vein as the swastika. So I hope that does address that the best I can. But still, I will say this. The Wolfsangel and the Black Sun, I'm not going to show the Black Sun because it's more so about the Wolfsangel as the more interesting study of tonight's stream, as far as the question goes. It was an innocent symbol before World War II, but during World War II and then after World War II, it certainly was not a positive symbol. But what do y'all think in the live chat? Do y'all think this is a positive symbol, a bad symbol? What do you think it is? Because there's an argument to be made that it is just attempting to be a neutral symbol, like it would have been pre-World War II. There are also arguments that it may not be a neutral symbol and may be used in a slightly negative light, but I would like to know what y'all think about it in the chat. But I hope I was able to kind of clear up why there's been a bit of controversy about the symbol. But luckily, and I will say this time and time again, luckily the Azov is not a nationalist or Nazi unit. It is not that anymore. It is just a unit in the Ukrainian armed forces and has this as its symbol. But at the beginning, there was maybe a very good argument to be made that there was a negative connotation to the symbol and a reason for adopting it. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again, Badger Bro, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Jesus Cabrera, who's a longtime channel legend as well, and he puts in a super sticker. It says, "You are amazing," and the YouTube creature is dancing around Big League with a cane. Hey! Look at him go. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Jesus Cabrera, for saying that we're amazing and putting in that dancing pair. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running. You are a long-time channel viewer, actually. You've been around here for quite a while. And I gotta thank you once again for finding this channel worthwhile to support and help us to keep it running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible on a nightly basis. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sergey, who puts in a $13 donation. And thank you very much, good sir. He says Russia might blow up of a dirty bomb in Moscow. U.S. and U.K. warnings and blame it on Ukraine and attack Kyiv or Odessa with a nuke then. And that why France said about deploying troops in Ukraine.
Huh, that's actually a pretty interesting theory, Sergusi. And I would say that that's a That's I can't confirm whether it's true or not. Really extrapolate a lot on it. But that is a really interesting theory, and it may actually be what the U.S. and UK were talking about. But I doubt that they blow up a dirty bomb in Moscow, especially if they were to destroy massive symbolic structures in Moscow, like the Kremlin or something along those lines. They probably wouldn't want to suffer that great of a symbolic blow to the Russians, but they may blow up one somewhere there. That's not out of the question at all. Maybe that really is what they're doing. Who knows? But still, a very interesting theory, no doubt. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bruce Lee, who's in the chat. He puts in a 5 and says, another 5 for the Take 5 Fund, and take a live chat question.
Hey, why not? Why not? We'll take another live chat, but thank you once again for the support.
All right, and the live chat question this time is going to go to Hodos, who says, France already has a military presence in Romania, and now signing a defense pact with Moldova, and could France be planning a move on Transnistria?
Yes. Well, I don't think they're planning a move on Transnistria as a whole, but they're certainly planning on being the security guarantor of all of Eastern Europe at this point that isn't in NATO. That's for sure. Because they're also pretty much giving almost similar security guarantees at this point to Ukraine by saying if Odessa or Kyiv is attacked, they're moving in an armed intervention, kind of like what they would do in Moldova at this point. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support, Bruce Lee, and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to Mr. Lunchtime, who throws in that $5 lunch money. And thank you very much, Mr. Lunchtime. He says, for the Manuel driving lessons. And great work, my friends. And stay toasty, my friends. I'm telling you what. I have a feeling I'm not going to live that one down for a little while. I should have looked before I posted that poll. But, you know, it was a funny joke. It was funny. I'm telling you. Thank you, Mr. Lunchtime. And Enforcer, what say you?
And again, thank you so much for the support, Mr. Lunchtime, and helping this channel to keep running. Of course, we love Manuel. Manuel's a great guy. And also, thank you so much for enjoying our work, and thank you for wanting us to stay toasty. We stay toasty too well, so I have to turn on a fan in my room to keep it cool. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Blue Flam 777 LSA once again. And they put in a 5. They just said statistics show that people who have the most birthdays live the longest. And question to the chat.
And every 60 seconds in Africa, a minute passes. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. We will get a live chat.
And the live chat this time is going to go to Carrie Ann Corzo, who says, what's the one thing you think could change the entire course of the war and have Ukraine win?
I think one thing that could change the entire course of the war is French armed intervention. If that happened, God forbid that it ever happens, at least for the Russians' sake, because I think that would be the beginning of the end for them. Because that would be, if the whole French army moved into Ukraine, which wouldn't happen, but let's just say it did, 118,000 strong army added on to the Ukrainian armed forces. Not only that, it's not just any army, it's a fully westernized NATO up-to-spec armed force. They would curb stomp the Russians. With the French Air Force, the French Army would support maybe from the French Navy. It would be unreal, the kind of curb stomping the Russians would receive in that war. So I think that would be a true war-changing moment, is French armed intervention in Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, it is so funny to talk about French armed intervention in a war, because it feels like it's the Victorian era again. Like the French are just going to come down and beat the shit out of the Russians just because they pissed them off. It's almost like that again, because it's not America doing it. It's just the French possibly doing it.
It really does, man. I got to agree with you.
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kat, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Kat. They said, love to all wonderful Americans and the U.S. kick-ass military for having our back and defending us in Europe. And America, F yeah. And Sweden, your ally, heart.
And we love Sweden, one of our greatest and newest allies in the NATO alliance. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again to all of you lovely Swedes who give us the coolest looking military equipment the world has ever seen. Y'all are the inventor of the Wedge. Y'all are inventor of the incredible Wedge main battle tank. The only kind in the world that is a main battle tank, but it is a literal wedge. What a cool tank. How neat. How incredible. They don't use this thing anymore, but they did it one time, and it was really neat. Y'all are a really cool country. I like Sweden. Love Sweden to bits. And I love to know that, Kat, America can always count on Sweden as a friend, and Sweden can always count from here forward as America being a friend. And so will that. Toad and Frog together again. And thank you once again for the support and all of the kind words being thrown America's way, because I have nothing but amazing things to say about Sweden as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Splay, who puts in their first ever super chat of the stream. And they put in a 100 SEK Swedish kroner. And thank you very much for that support. They said, why didn't Ukraine go for the JAS-39 Gripen?
Dash. It's a sob salesperson. Watch Splay be like working for Saab, and he's like one of the sales representatives. He throws in a 100 kroner here, and he's like, "So why didn't they buy him from us?" Sadly, Splay, I have no idea why they didn't. The Gripen is great. The Gripen is cheap. Well, not cheap, to buy, but they're cheap to maintain. They're economical. They carry a decent amount of ordnance. They're just great. I mean, like, the Gripen is a great plane. Nothing wrong with it at all. And I would have to say, I have no idea why they didn't buy them from y'all, because I think it would be the perfect fit for Ukraine. It takes less maintenance than an F-16. It's less expensive than an F-16. It's easier to fly than an F-16. Everything is better than an F-16, except for the payload it can carry. The payload is pretty much halved from what the F-16 can carry. But that doesn't matter, because if you can actually get those things up in the sky all the time with really no problems, that's really what counts. And I think that the Gripen would have been a better fit for the Ukrainian Air Force than the F-16. But I'm guessing that they're probably going to be working on that in the future. It's just something that isn't happening right now. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Splay, and thank you for asking a really good question. Of course, being from Sweden, I'm sure that you're interested because of Swedish economic interest that they would buy a Gripen, and I honestly think they should have. That's what I think. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Blue Flam 777 LSA once again. I thought I was reading the second one off for a duplicate, but it's not. He puts in another 5 and says, let's get Philosophy call. Let's see. When two vegans get into an argument, is it still called a beef? YouTube said I could ask that question to the chat.
Oh my god. Dude, Blue Flame is the new sign-offs. And I gotta say, let's see. When two vegans get in an argument, is it still called a beef? No, usually it's called a celery. Usually it's called an avocado or something. Beyond that, thank you so much for the support. Now with this channel to keep on running. And he's got another one, Matthew, that's really good. I think you just saw it come in, but that is a really good one too. But still, we will make sure to get a question from the chat. But thank you so much, Blue Flame, for being the comedic relief tonight. And with that, let's get the live chat.
And the live chat is going to go to Carl Richford, who says, will Kaliningrad go for independence?
I would think it would be cool if they did, because a while ago I was talking on the channel, I was like, wouldn't that be cool, y'all, if it became like the Hong Kong or Singapore of Eastern Europe, where they were pretty much just a free-for-all economically, a tax haven, and that would massively explode business and opportunity in Kaliningrad. It would become like a little Singapore or a Hong Kong of Eastern Europe, and that would be a really cool thing to see. I don't think they'd ever really shoot for independence, though, unless their hand was forced to do something like that. So I doubt it, but it would be cool if they did. No doubt about that. What a cool world it would be to have a free Kaliningrad. Honestly, hot take here, I think it would be pretty cool to have a whole bunch of city-states throughout the world where things were just different. They operated off of a different currency, had different laws, because I think that's cool. Like, back in the day, people didn't know this in World War II history, but Danzig wasn't a part of Poland. It was actually an independent state called the Free City of Danzig, and it was very similar to Poland and Germany at the same time, but it had its own laws. It was kind of what I'm talking about. It was like a city-state that was like a little Singapore or Hong Kong of Eastern Europe, at least for a small while, which was a really cool thing. I just think little city-states like that are just so interesting, so unique, and so special. And on top of that, because they're unique and special, they usually end up creating their own culture. Like Hong Kong and Singapore both have their own unique little mini cultures inside of such a small area. There's Singapore. An entire culture exists within this small area of Singapore here. And then if you go to Hong Kong, an equally small area right over here, an entire culture of its own exists in Hong Kong. And I just think little city-states like that are just so neat for that reason. But with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. I think it'd be cool if they did that, but who knows. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Badger Bro, who puts in a 5 and says, Enforcer, have you the video titled Russian and Ukrainian Soldiers Crimea Standoff on YouTube from 2014?
I think I have, but that would have been so long ago, I'd have to go and refresh my memory. So with that, I hope that does address that well, Badger Bro, and thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another one from Blue Flam 777 LSA, and he puts in a 5. He says, "I am king, to be caught." Let's see here. Is this a good one? Can I read this one?
It's a good one. It's clear. You can read it.
He says, let's see you queens. I just opened a furniture store. I believe in fair prices. My prices are a sofa king low. I will say your question to the chat.
He gotcha. Dude, did you hear it?
I didn't even get it, man. My brain's so tired. I didn't even get it. Tell me, explain.
My prices are so fucking low.
What'd you say?
Sofa king low.
Oh, damn, man. You scared the hell out of me. I was like, what are you saying exactly?
But you get it now? You get it now?
I don't think I said it like that, did I?
You almost said it like that. I almost tried to imitate how you said it, and it came out just the way it should have. That's it. I was like, yeah! That's like, no way, gotcha. But beyond that, Blue Flam, I cleared that one because that one was just too good. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we will get another live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
So, on that bombshell, the other live chat is going to go to SNR Dougherty, who says, why did the U.S. give Russia warnings about the attacks that were going to happen, and why did we warn them?
Wait, can you reread that live chat again?
They said, why did the U.S. give Russia warnings about the attacks that were going to happen, and why did we warn them?
I have no idea. I think we maybe warned just to keep American citizens safe, although that makes no sense. Maybe we wanted them to freak out about it, so that way, in the future, when it happens, we would have culpable deniability. We could say that it wasn't us, because we already pretty much gave a general warning about what was coming. So that way they couldn't try and blame it on us, because it wouldn't make any logical sense at that point. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat, Blue Flam. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Warren Zasquatch, who puts in a 2 and says, congrats on the flag. It's nice.
And thank you so much, Sasquatch, Warren Zasquatch, for liking the flag. It is nice. I love it. I love it. It's great. It's nice. I like it. But still, I'm going crazy over here. But still, thank you so much for the support. And man, I actually have the Patreon open right now just to make sure that I keep an eye on it during the stream, because we actually found out that a lot of people end up getting on the Patreon during the stream. So I want to make sure, if anyone joins, we can give you all a little shout out and stuff from here forward. But I saw that post we made today, Matthew, of the pillow, the mug, and the towel. Dude, that looks really good. That's so clean looking.
Oh man, it does. It took me like a good 10 minutes to set up that little photo shoot for that. And I was like, oh man, that's fire. That's straight fire right there. I was impressed with it.
Man, you were like, this shit fire.
It is, man. I was like, it is.
But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Warren. And everyone will be able, hopefully everyone, of course it's limited edition, so we don't know how many people are going to be getting one, but hopefully everyone can get one here in the future. Signed by Matthew and me. We were kind of panicking, though, in the background, though, quietly, because all the flags are going to be hand signed by Matthew and me. At least me. We're kind of conversating whether Matthew will sign them or not, because what we found out is that there are a lot more people than we thought who would want one. And now we're very concerned, because the original number that we had in our mind was feasible to sign all of them. Now we're looking at a number that is so high it may not be feasible to sign all of them. So now we're trying to figure out what in the world happens if that happens. How do we sign them all? Because it could take, at this rate, like we actually kind of tried to do a little bit of math on it, at this rate, it could actually take days or weeks to sign all the flags that might end up getting bought. Weeks, probably. So at that case, it might be a while, because we're still going to sign them, otherwise it will not be a cool limited edition drop. But it might be weeks until y'all actually get them after y'all buy them. Just putting that up there up front, because if there are as many people as we think are going to buy them, it will probably take us a while to be able to sign them all, pack them all, and then ship them all. So that is a great major concern for us right now, and we're trying to figure out how in the world to work that. But I think in reality, the only way we could work that is that it might take some time for orders to get out. At least all of them. They will go out, of course, quickly. But for all of them to go out, it may happen over a period of time. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, in the meantime, while you're doing these last couple of questions here, something popped in my mind. It was like, go try to break the coding on the site, because we have a sample, like a preview site up and running that I've like made, and I was like, because I have an order limit on the flag, like listing and everything. I went and tried to break the code just a minute ago on the order limiting little code that's been written, and I realized, there was a glitch. I'm glad I looked at it. I won't say what the glitch is, that way nobody tries to exploit it later, or like our haters that are watching tries to go and do something with it. But I'm glad I looked, because that would have been a big one. But anyways, up next we have a $2 super chat from Boy, who says, "Geez, mercenaries, UTV/ATVs, drones there now. Devil, thumbs down."
He who work overtime is angel, but he who takes salary is devil. But beyond that, thank you so much, Boy, for the support. And I would agree with you. Devil down thumb. Devil disapprove. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, Matthew, I actually think that was our last super chat, if I'm reading this correct.
His was.
Wait, whoa, what happened? Actually, we have a $2 super chat from Death for Real, who said, Alan, aw, man, he's calling for Alan. Aw, man,
I'm telling you, man, aw.
On the bright side, we didn't have to worry about a hit piece being made on us tonight, because they didn't even run a show. Aw, man. Sounds like you're going down and out. Aw, man. Pull out the Grim Reaper meme. Aw, man. And then also, Matthew, you wouldn't believe it. We got a sweet little treat for our last super chat. It was Badger Bro again. He threw in $1.49 super chat. Thank you so much for that, by the way. And all it showed was hot dog.
Oh, a hot dog with extra relish.
That's it. Extra relish, governor. Hold the beans. But beyond that, I think
interest you in some extra relish, good sir. Would you like some relish on that dog? No, I would not like relish on that dog. But tell the hot dog man to keep my damn name out of his mouth, or I slap.
That's that Will Smith, I'm telling you.
Keep my channel's name out your effing mouth. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support, Badger Bro, and helping this channel to keep running. I do hate a hot dog, and I thank you so much for reminding me of that. And that is the last super chat, and then now it's time for us to move on into the live chats. However, I do have to say that due to time constraints, because so many people threw in a super chat tonight. A sapper chat. Oh, wait a minute, there's another one. Matthew, we got to get this one before we move into the live chats.
Panama Floyd put in a 10. He said, break the code? LSA Bletchley Park. Question from the chat, please.
Do you know?
And Panama, I have to try to break the code, because the haters are out there thinking, how can we get on there and like mess up the site? So I've got to go through and try to break everything possible and make sure it's all working right. Because if they can find a way to exploit or destroy something we create, they will do it. And I'm putting all the safeguards in place. I'm 5 steps ahead of them. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the support, Panama Floyd. And I got to say, do you know what Bletchley Park is, Matthew?
I don't.
Bletchley Park is where the British figured out how to break the Enigma code.
Oh, well, damn. I'm not really doing that severe, but it's close.
Oh, heavens! But thank you so much for the support, Panama Flight. I don't know why I put so much emphasis on heavens. But beyond that, thank you so much.
Good heavens!
Oh, good heavens! Wait, hang on. I wonder if I can pull up that soundbite of that. Oh, great heavens! Because I need y'all to know when I do that, what I'm doing that about. Oh, great heavens. Yeah, here we go. Oh, dude, I got it. Oh, Wait, hang on. Here we go. Here it is. Full volume.
Oh, great heavens!
That's the thing I'm doing every time I do that, y'all. Just for y'all to know. Every time y'all hear me go, oh, great heavens, it's literally that meme. It's just that soundbite, but I'm doing it myself. But beyond that, thank you for the support, Panama Floyd. Two chairs. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, let's get that live chat. Move us into the live chat. But while we're addressing the live chat that Panama Floyd sponsored, we're pretty much moving into the live chat segment at this point. Due to time constraints tonight, because so many people threw in super chats, and I want to quickly say thank you to everyone who did throw in a super chat, because that was incredibly kind of all of y'all in helping this channel to keep running and helping it to be possible, and we're greatly appreciative to every single one of y'all. However, when there's more super chats, we have less time for live chats. And considering that the stream is almost a marathon-length stream at this point, nearly 3.5 hours long, we're sadly going to only be able to get a limited number of live chats beyond the one that Panama Floyd sponsors. So after we answer the one sponsored by Panama Floyd, we'll be addressing the Morse code message of the night, and then getting 3 live chats and rounding out the stream. And so with that, let's get the one that was sponsored by Panama Floyd.
And this one goes to Thomas, who says, word on the street, the ruble has been rejected, and China is now forcing Russian companies to take loans in yen, and that's just horrible, now isn't it?
I think it's yuan. Isn't it like
Yuan?
Yeah, like Y-U-A-N?
Yeah, it's yuan.
Yep, it is Chinese yuan. Yen. I was like, yen is
Manuel.
Japanese. Poor Manuel. Rip Manuel. Manuel. Rip.
Juan or Manuel, it's one or the other.
But beyond that, yes, they are. And that's something that you can actually see Putin talk about in his interview with Tucky G, who Tucky G is now ripping into Putin now, which I find funny because apparently his romance with Russia ended very quickly after he left. But beyond that, to answer that, yes, that's happening. And Russia is actually China's wimp, like the best way to put it. Because their economy is so weak, China can easily overpower it. And that's true. They are actually making Russian companies start conducting business in the yuan instead of the ruble, further devaluing the ruble, but further strengthening the yuan. Funnily enough, though, the yuan being used in Russia is really the only place now where the yuan is starting to be used as a reserve currency. The US dollar still reigns supreme around the entire world at this point as the reserve currency. No other currency even gets close, as compared to what Putin was saying, because the Russian economy is so weak that they pretty much got screwed out of their own currency. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat, Panama Floyd. And it's time for us to get into the proper live chat questions with our Morse code decoders coming up first.
All right, and up first we have our Morse code decoders. Tonight it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Renew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, David Millsaps, and a return of Toxic Bananas. They said Moscow is panicking over the reality that people may not like Russia all that much. Long live the LSA, and nice job.
And that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. Y'all hit the jackpot for the night. Huge shout out to all of y'all. Y'all got that correct over and over and over and over and over again. It's the 745th day. Y'all got it right again. Huge respect. And with that, we're going to be moving on into our live chats. But before we move on into our live chats, we have a super chat to address, and then we'll be moving on into the live chats proper. And so, Matthew, what do we got for the super chat?
And this one goes to Indy Andy 4C, who puts in a 10 and says, "What's the link between the Battle of Tippecanoe and the moon?"
And I don't know. I don't know at all, Indy Andy 4C. What is the difference? What is the difference? What's the link? What's the link? I gotta know. Link by link. The chain is growing longer. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And in the meantime, while we get the answer to that question, we're going to be moving on into our live chats. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And we have one from Magic Forest, who says, France is about to enter Ukraine to fight alongside, and any idea of what is in it for France? And they wouldn't be risking their lives like this if it weren't advantageous for France, would they?
It's advantageous for France. Because to try and explain this very quickly, because we are very pressed for time right now. The reason why France is doing this is because France wants to position itself as the leader of a European sphere, and by doing things such as guaranteeing security for Ukraine and conducting armed intervention in Ukraine, if this gamble goes well, France has now positioned themselves to actually be the main leader of Europe, because they are the ones who have the strong arm and the thick skull to actually get things done, at least on the muscle side of things, which is usually what you need to be able to be a leader. You need to have muscle and wit. And so with that, I hope that does address that question very well. And with that, we are moving on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Leonce Pierre, who says, is it true that a French frigate destroyed a German submarine in the NATO naval exercises?
Yes, it is. They actually did quite well at it. And it's showing that the French Navy is pretty freaking good. And they actually really are. They're a pretty good Navy. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. We didn't show that on tonight's stream, though, but really big shout out to the French Navy for doing so well in the war games. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Aaron Shu, who says maybe it's to preempt the possibility of Russia launching a nuclear anti-satellite weapon. Get it over with before that's a possibility, question mark.
Maybe so. Maybe that's what they're trying to do. But that's still a pretty big stretch, because the French army is going to get involved in Ukraine. There still isn't really a good way that they can get to Baikonur in Kazakhstan and stop that launch, but maybe so. What do I know? Like, maybe that is possible. Maybe they'd be able to conduct some kind of an insane raid doing that. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream at exactly 3 hours and 30 minutes long, as I'm saying this statement right here. Right there, that was 3 hours and 30 minutes. I got to thank all of y'all so much, once again, for enjoying this channel and finding it to be worthwhile. It's incredible to know that folks around the world pretty much enjoy this channel, and tonight that was certainly true, with a peak of 7.5 thousand live viewers on at one given moment, and nearly 60,000 people having watched this stream before it ended, with 3,200 of y'all still here. It is an absolute honor to know that so many people have been able to enjoy this news here on this channel tonight. If y'all did enjoy it and you're new to the channel, and I suspect that some of y'all may be, make sure to subscribe and also comment and hit the like button, because it helps out this channel to reach more people, and if you enjoy this news, other people will probably enjoy it as well. So do them a courtesy and hit that like button, comment on the stream after it becomes a video, and subscribe, because it helps us out greatly in getting to reach more people. Not only that, we run these live streams 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine in picture and video evidence every single day but Mondays at the same time every single night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And not only that, on most days of the week, when there is enough news in the middle of the day, we are able to make short war summaries, which are 10 to 12 minute long videos that recap some of the major news events of the day, really cutting it down. So if the stream wasn't for you, because we know that the stream isn't for everyone, it's incredibly long, and there's there's a little bit of fluff because we joke around and laugh in it. It's not all just straight raw news. If you are looking for that, though, the short war summaries are probably for you, because that's exactly what those are. But with that, I will see you all tomorrow for the Sunday night fundraiser. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. The Leaf Spring Army will never die, but my voice will, because it's cracking. But good night, and long live the Leaf Spring Army.
And oh dear me, it was cracking indeed, smashing indeed. But with that, good night, folks. Thank you all for another great stream. Be sure to join us tomorrow night for the fundraiser stream, because it's going to be a big one, as usual. And of course, get some rest. Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, and good night.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.